Looking for 9. At Serious Joy, we pride ourselves on providing astrology enthusiasts with exactly what they're looking for. Daily personalized inspiration that speaks directly to the heart. Sign up today and you'll receive personalized messages straight to your phone 7 days a week. And that's just half of it. You'll also get access to our exclusive members-only site with tons of amazing features. Experience the most accurate astrology service on the web at seriousjoy.com.
Hello and welcome to Namaste Today Live. I'm your host, Sensei Christopher Witecki, a psychic astrologer and a person who is here to help you stand in your heart. My mission is to help you find out what your purpose is on life, how to stand in your heart, and how to manifest your personal dreams. Because I believe that if everyone's on the course of their personal dreams, we will come into enlightenment here on planet Earth. Hello and welcome to everyone. We are streaming live on all of our platforms in a super broadcast today. We're on YouTube, we are on LinkedIn, we are on X, formerly known as Twitter, and we are on Facebook. And if you are in our super chat, please say hi and where you are chatting in from today. Oh, looks like we have someone. I missed it. It went by too quick. Someone from England. Sorry. Whoever's from England, sorry. So nice to be here. Hello, Carol in Miami. Hello, Rachie in upstate New York. Hello, Fraser in Ontario. So nice. Oh, it's nice to see Astro Design, Dom. I think I recognize your face under a different name. I want to say Erica. I'm not sure. Hello, Miss Annie from Iowa. How cool. Hello to San Antonio. Hello to Angela in Illinois. And we'll say hello to Sydney in Atlanta. I love you too, everyone. If I haven't said so already, it's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. We are in the midst of a Friday energy. In fact, it's Black Friday here. Happy belated Thanksgiving to you. We're entering into really a magical season, although it may not feel like it just like today, because today, step 2 is ruling the day. The moon just went into Taurus, so things are maybe a little edgy at the moment, but really there are magical sparkles coming up this upcoming week as the sun moves into Sagittarius. In this week's show, or in today's show, we're going to talk about how the sun is now in Sagittarius and you are building a new narrative about yourself that you've never said before. Also, we have a quantum full moon in Gemini this Monday morning, very early in the morning. We have Mercury squaring Neptune, which is definitely an hiccup from the universe. And then Mercury will jump into Capricorn to do some planning. And later tonight on Astro Mingle, my guest, academic neurologist and near-death experience survivor. His name is Dr. Eben Alexander III. He will share his experiences about the afterlife, his scientific opinion on the afterlife, and his miraculous healing. But before we dive into all that great, juicy fun, let's take a look at the week's moods and your zodiac weather. This zodiac weather is from Saturday, November 25th to Friday, December 1st, 2023. Looking ahead at your post-holiday weekend forecast, over the weekend there's a lot of inner transformation going on. You're going to feel a new story and experience a breakthrough. Let's drill down. On Saturday, it's partly cloudy and somewhat anxious. Step 2 to step 3 means the moon and Jupiter both rule the day. So you are feeling deeply about what you believe about yourself, and you are grounding these feelings for a new future. But with Mars squaring Saturn, it is an affirmation that it's time to change the story you tell yourself. On Sunday, it's sunny and learning. Step 3 to step 4 means Jupiter and Uranus rule this day. This means that you're going to expand your belief about yourself, which will lead to a phenomenal breakthrough. We call it a Halamia moment. And with Mercury trining the North Node, you also realize how this new story leads to a new character. And with the moon in Taurus, it's all becoming too real. Looking ahead at the 5-day mood forecast for the upcoming week, this week you take that seed of a new story and you carry it out to commitment and acting on the new story. On Monday, it's overcast and rather spaced out. Step 5 means Mercury rules the day, and very early in the morning, we have the full moon in Gemini, which actually apexes at step 4. This full moon gives you a new mindset to clarify your story and ask the question, are you really sure you're thinking of yourself in the right terms? And with Mercury squaring Neptune, it's a shift of your big picture story and aligning it with your spiritual destiny and fate. On Tuesday, it's sunny and feeling rather open. Step 6 means Venus rules this day, so your heart is opening up and now accepting this new perspective on yourself and this new story. You could say you are setting course for a new horizon. And with the moon in Gemini, you're ready to tell everyone and share your plans. On Wednesday, it's cloudy, overcast, and somewhat moody. Step 7 means Neptune rules the day, so you are going deep in your spiritual sense. The moon in Cancer means you are feeling a lot of yourself and your own emotional story change. You are uniting your spiritual story, in essence, to your earth story on this day. You could say the new story will take flight. And with Venus opposing your north node, expect a change of cast of characters in your life. On Thursday, it's partly sunny, but rather alert. Step 8 means Saturn rules the day. So this is the day when you really commit to your new story on the inside. Prepare to pivot your life now. And with the moon in Cancer, you are feeling into the possibilities of the future. And then on Friday, it's sunny and fired up. Step 9 means Mars rules this day. You're ready to put that new story into action. You're prepared now to live the new story. And the moon moves into Leo, so you celebrate in your heart. And Mercury moves into Capricorn, which means your mind is ready to make some rock-solid plans.
It's serious joy, joy, joy.
If you haven't already, please be kind and do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Serious Joy TV. Hit the bell button so you're notified when we go live. And if you don't mind, would you please like this video so the YouTube algorithm will suggest us to other people who enjoy astrology. Namaste Today Live is proudly sponsored by SeriousJoy.com. That is a astrologically based spiritual life coaching program designed by yours truly and with a huge staff of practitioners. Every day we take the information from your natal chart and we give you a coaching program designed to bring you into your heart, to bring you into your power, and right now to help you find your truth and purpose. We've now just entered into chapter 4 of the 40 Days of Truth and Purpose, where we're going over all 12 houses, all aspects, all transits, and I've introduced a proprietary grand purpose calculator and cipher. If you want to know what that means, well, it's not too late. Come on down to SeriousJoy.com. You can sign up for the first time for just $3.99, and I'll have more details about what's also live in our service after the show and after Astro Mingle. Well, we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot to mingle about. Let's take a look at the week's planets and transits. And a little disclaimer there. I don't know what's going on, but every now and then I'll notice myself gigantic. I don't know if it's something in the software or whatever. So if you have like an extreme close-up on some of my skin's pores, pardon me for not moisturizing. Well, folks, it is now that weekend here in the United States known as Thanksgiving, where we give our thanks. I had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you all did too. And I am grateful for everyone across the world as well, not just my fellow U.S. citizens. It's an interesting time because it's always that time where, of course, we're sort of coming off of the high of the year. We sort of realize, okay, the year is over. There's really not much more we can do. Let's sort of close up business and prepare for the next year. Of course, holidays will always be extremely busy, right, and keep us really occupied. And what's interesting from an astrological perspective is this is the time of year where we actually rewrite our story known as Sagittarius. And what Sagittarius energy is our belief structure consciousness. So we have basically all of our beliefs memorized in consciousness, and they serve as sort of an automated programming to life. In the step system that I have downloaded from the universe, I believe is step 3. It's the third step. So it starts with separating from God, step 0, coming into your heart, step 1, feeling your heart, step 2, and from what your heart feels, 1 to the 2, we now know what we believe, step 3. So I believe step 3 is really the last focuser of our consciousness, minus our Mercury, our thoughts. So our thoughts at step 5 can alter or change things. But step 3 is the golden thread that sort of interweaves all of our manifestation, all of our life. And most of the law of attraction comes from what your heart feels, therefore comes from what you believe. So we law of attract according to our beliefs. Well, as I was saying, every year, this time of year, we get to Sagittarius and we sort of do this annual review. I find it interesting because back in pagan times, the new year was Scorpio, 0, and Sagittarius was the first thing you did in the new year. The first thing you did in the new year was you regurgitated what you've learned so far with the sun in Sagittarius, how you've grown, how your life has changed, how your story has changed. And through the 3 decades of Sagittarius, you end up changing your story about yourself, your story about daily life, and your story about where your future is headed. I'm not sure when New Year's moved to January 1st. There's a lot of complications in the ancient calendars. We used to have a 10-month system. Then Julius Caesar created July. So then it was an 11-month system. And then Augustus Caesar created August. And then we had 12 months. So things got really wonky as far as the calendar year is concerned. But the astrological year is always the same. It remains consistent. After we end the year with Scorpio and we have the death of the old, we move into this period where we rewrite our belief structures, and then we move into Capricorn where we take control, where we start making actual plans. And that's literally where the New Year's is for all of us now in modern age. New Year's is right after the first decade of Capricorn, where you make new promises to yourself, and then you start the year making new promises to the world. Well, I digress a little bit, because to this year, it's going to be more than just a subtle little upgrade of our story. Every year, it's sort of, okay, here's what we learned, here's where we're going, here's what's next. This year, I believe, is profoundly different. I believe this year, you put the book you've been writing on the shelf and you start writing an entirely new story in your life. Now, of course, life isn't as black and white as that. Quite often in life, it's a gradation. We fade out and we fade up energetically. But in essence, what is going to happen is, I think this year, and it's really starting right now as we start here on step 2 and go into Grandmaster step 3 Sag next 24 hours, I believe we're going to begin from scratch in our story. In other words, all the themes of your life so far, all of your bad luck, your good luck, the things that happened to you that were fated, all of it was part of what I call the story you were born to. And that story is, in my experience, in my professional opinion, officially over. We can put that on the bookshelf now. You are done with the story you were born to. If you intend to recreate it, to relive it, to not be able to let go of it, to insist on it happening, fine. Your free will allow that to happen. But the rest of us are moving on to a new story now, which technically I think will begin next January. In fact, I'm putting my money on the table that it will change when the Sun and Pluto conjoin on January 20th to 21st. They actually move into Aquarius together. That to me is when the plot officially starts to happen in the world. Between now and January 20th, we're basically planning for the rest of our life and for the rest of our year, if nothing else, next year, 2024. So in this moment right now, we have an interesting week ahead because we are going to be casting this news story about ourselves. And the last 2 full moons of the year, one on Monday is a full moon in Gemini at 4 degrees Gemini. And then the one at the end of December is at 4 degrees Cancer. And that's the day after Christmas that we have a full moon in Cancer at 4 degrees. 4 degrees is I belong. And so what these last full moons of the year are going to do is going to radically alter where you belong with yourself. First, where your thoughts belong with yourself. That's the full moon this Monday. And then at the end of the month of December, how you ought to feel about yourself. In fact, you could say that one will lead to the other. First, you'll change your thinking about yourself here in the next week. And then once you start to think differently about yourself, you'll realize sometime over the holidays that you feel differently about yourself now, that you no longer feel like you're the same person. So go ahead and wave goodbye to that image in the mirror, because from what I can calculate looking at the planets, we are in fact stepping into a whole new life and a whole new story. And it technically begins right now. In fact, you're going to come to your first major conclusions that your story has changed sometime tomorrow, Saturday. If you're watching on Friday night, going to be Saturday. That's when it starts to kick up and begin. We hit Grandmaster step 3. Now, let me get a little deeper now, as I like to get. I'm a little serious tonight, too. I'm trying to loosen up and relax, but I can feel I'm now thinking of Phil Collins. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. I can feel it coming in the air. I can feel it. You might be able to feel it too. It's not looming. It's not bad, but it's definitely a lot of change around the corner, a big change around the corner. The biggest challenge that we're going to have going forward is correcting the way we look at ourselves. And that's really what a belief is. A belief is a perspective. And from what I understand from my spiritual study, perspective is what makes each life different. So we are born in some lives from the perspective of a rich person, other lives from the perspective of a poor person, some lives from the perspective of a sick person. We're always changing our perspective and our point of view. And it seems to be part of God's plan that we do change our perspective. Now, this is why I actually don't judge anyone's beliefs on the planet. If someone believes in something that is considered evil, or someone believes in something that is considered old-fashioned, I don't fault them, because I know their perspective will change. I don't get involved in arguments with people on social media about this is the right way and this is the wrong way, because some lifetimes you're meant to be wrong according to the status quo. Some lifetimes you're meant to be right and be along with the status quo. I think when we come down from heaven, it's sort of like choosing a theme park. We kind of choose a theme park, a belief structure, a perspective, and we ride that lifetime out and we learn about who we are. That's ultimately what the main goal is to learn about who you are and experience who you are in the flesh. So it doesn't matter what you choose. I just want to put that out there, but I will tell you what goes into a belief according to our truth. It is what your heart, step one, feels, step two. What your heart feels is your truth. What your heart feels day to day about anything is what your truth is. The difficult part about that is that it doesn't always align with other people's truth. And we as humans are actually very community-based. We actually want to get along. We want to be on the same team. And we're actually pretty immature about how to handle life when one person believes something and another person believes something else. We don't know how to handle it. This is where we're the most Neanderthal. For some reason, we can't just stand in our own truth and allow someone else to have a completely different truth. I think that's part of ascension. I think that's part of really what enlightenment is. And as you become more enlightened and you become more wise on earth, you become more tolerant of other people's beliefs. Now, I'm saying that because we're about to, in this upcoming week, craft a new belief about who we are. And this new belief about who you are is the magic bean to the beanstalk that's going to grow to what we call the story you were born to live. The premise of it is your belief about yourself. The premise of it is what you believe about yourself. Now, what you were born believing, what your parents told you to believe, what society told you to believe, what media told you to believe, what the internet told you to believe, what you read in books, all of that is not who you really are. And of course, how would they know what you should believe? They don't. We have not been explained to as a species where our true beliefs come from. They come from our heart and our feelings. And then our mind tries to describe it. Our mind tries to put words to it. Our mind tries to explain it to others, to convince to others. But really that essence of knowing who you are comes down to what your heart feels. Now, I would imagine that most of the people watching tonight have based what they believe about themselves on two things: what the world said and what you experienced so far in life. What the world said and what you experienced. And although that might point to the truth, it is not your truth. So one could say that our goal for this upcoming week is to separate what we truly believe from what we've been told to believe about ourselves. That is the key of the week, to separate what you truly believe, your heart really feels, from what the world has told you to feel. Now, I want to say to you, yes, it's going to seem magical and wonderful. If you listen to your heart and what your heart really believes, it may be hard to believe. Your mind might have a hard time thinking that it's true. Other people may think you're full of crap. You may be afraid of telling people, and that's all good, just so you know. We have to give the universe a chance to make our beliefs come true. But if you close down on what your heart tells you right off the bat, worried about the world, then I believe you're going to rob yourself of what you're here to do in this lifetime. And I also believe you're going to be a follower in the new age, not a leader in the new age. Now, just when I say leader, it doesn't mean you're going to have your own YouTube channel. It doesn't mean you're going to be out in the world picketing. It doesn't mean you're going to be necessarily running for Congress. Being a leader really in the new age means that you have the courage to live according to what your heart feels, the courage to live according to your truth and not apologize for it. That itself will be an influence to the people who watch you, the people who work around you, the people who live with you, the people who are in your family and your circle of friends, what I call our sphere of influence. If you live according to what your heart feels, as crazy it may seem to other people, if you're really in your heart, everyone will think you're crazy, but adorable. Like, it's like, she's nuts, but she's so adorable because she lives in her heart. So when you live in your heart and it's really authentically true, and we can see it's true, it's real hard to be cruel or shut people down in their heart. It takes a real evil SOB to do that. So, the secret sauce of this is that we want to live in our heart and we want to honor what our heart is telling ourselves. And this will allow us to become our authentic truth. Now, what's going to happen this upcoming week? The theme of this week is called Defining Your Truth. That's what I coined this week as. It's called Defining Your Truth. And what I mean by that is what I just led into, that our goal this week is to be an observer of our life. So just try to take the backseat this week and watch yourself, watch the way you're talking to yourself, watch how you're responding to yourself, and try to make a distinction between the story you were born to and the story you were born to live, or the story you were told was true about you and the story your heart tells you is true. That is the work of the week. All right. That's our main goal of the week. And I would argue, and I'd love to hear back in a week from people on what you're picking up on, but I have a sense and a knowing from myself that we are going to realize that we have changed, if nothing else, this year. You may not have, of course, you've changed through the years, but probably since March, when Saturn went into Pisces, you've likely changed dramatically. And I have to say, for me, it's a mix. There are things that are happening inside of me that I'm very surprised about. There are things happening inside of me that I've been waiting to happen my whole life. So some of it isn't a surprise. Some of it is a surprise that it can happen now. A surprise that I'm comfortable with myself now. A surprise that I'm not going to apologize for myself anymore. So in my case, I'm like Dorothy. I could have gone home anytime I click in my red slippers or my ruby red shoes. But I had fears, I had hangups, I was worried about what people would think. I was holding back, I was hesitating. So I'm very curious where you all stand. Maybe you've always known this whole time and you just haven't lived by it, or you finally are realizing your truth and you're separating your confusion of what you were told to be from what your heart really wants to be. But I'll say this, in my study of humanity and ascension, what your heart feels you are is the path and the story you were meant to live, period. And maybe it won't happen this life, but it will happen. Now, I actually believe that a lot of it can happen this life. I haven't heard everyone's stories out there, but no matter what age you are, I want to remind you it's never too late. And I also want to put out there as well that I believe that the 144,000 light workers, as they say, the ones that have come to raise the ceiling of vibration in this lifetime, according to astrology, the earth wasn't even ready for you until really 2025, technically. 2024 is going to be a year of transitioning the new power in and the old power out. So next year is going to be hell as far as the separation of powers are concerned. Not hell for us, just hell on earth. I don't think horrible hell in the sense of war and mayhem. I just mean like nothing will seem very clear. We're going to be going through a smoke screen where we're basically not knowing what to believe or where to go. And this is why I'm bringing this all up right now, is because you need to find in the next week what your story is with yourself, because when the world gets to be chaotic next year, and I think very confusing, there's only one thing you're going to know. You're going to know who you are and what you believe in for yourself. And that belief in yourself is going to be your main compass to how to make decisions in your life and where to navigate your life next year. So going back to the beginning of this conversation that we're having, yes, it's the end of the year. Yes, it seems like business is over, but no, actually, this is a very important next 3.5 weeks, because you're basically going to write the script of what you believe about yourself and what you believe your life is going to be. And because a belief structure is the golden thread through all of reality, you're basically writing the script for the rest of your life in the next 3 weeks, which, by the way, is why we did the 40 days of my truth and purpose at Serious Joy. And it's not too late to do it either, by the way. You can also do it over the holidays if you weren't able to do it. The reason for that is because it's a program that will teach you from start to end who you are and what your purpose is according to your natal chart. So in this next week, we're going to define our inner truth. And, there'll probably be some conflicts. There might be some people trying to convince you to go this way. There might be people trying to convince you to do something that you haven't really wanted to do, but you're feeling like you have to appease them. Like, in a way, the past will tempt you back, just so you know. And I find that when we graduate a major moment in our life, okay, like this moment here where we're escaping out of the gravity of our karma and our past lives, as you're kind of pulling up, it's almost like I call it bubble gum on your shoe. When you have bubble gum on your shoe, your past life tries to pull you back down to the ground, back down to the past reality. So I would expect some friction this week, as in arguments, people trying to tell you who you are, maybe people inviting you to the job you're planning on quitting, maybe the job you're planning on quitting, they offer you a raise, okay? That sort of stuff happens, and I would applaud it and be happy, because that is the evidence. If the past tries to bring you back, it's actually an affirmation that you're on the new path, and that's why the path is trying to pull you back. So this week will be the stickiest week, I think, between now and next Friday, where you have to basically, in the course of the week, determine what your truth is, step away from your old truth, accept that truth, commit to that truth, and by next Friday, put that truth in action. In other words, put your money where your mouth is next Friday, 1 week from tonight. Now, the subplot of this week is it's going to be a shift in character and relations. A shift in character and relations. So what's going to happen is, I'm not sure when it'll happen or how, but you're going to realize at some point this week that you're not the person you used to be. And maybe it's been for a long time, but now you're realizing it. All right. So it doesn't mean it's happening this week. It means the awareness of it is happening this week. You're going to come to realize the light bulb is going to go off like, oh my gosh, I am over that, or that doesn't affect me anymore. I really don't care about that person or this thing anymore. So sort of life catching up to us this week and realizing that I'm different than I used to be. You're also going to realize that you're tired of the old bullshit. What I mean by that is relationships, I think, will hit a mark where it just becomes boring, where certain people that maybe annoy you or like trigger you or activate you or whatever, you'll find that it's just suddenly has no effect on you. You're going to find that suddenly it just doesn't matter anymore. You are literally over it, and realizing that you're over it. And of course, that begs the question, well, what's next? Well, don't worry, we'll be getting that to the following week. But in essence, I think you're going to realize that the way you relate to people, the way you relate to things has also changed. So that's really powerful. Who I am is changing, and the way I relate to things is now changing. Very powerful. And the key question to ask yourself, and this key question ultimately boils down to the full moon in Gemini at 4 degrees. What must I think about myself? What must I think about myself? All right. Now, this is the most important thing for the week, because Sagittarius is our belief structure, what we believe, and that's the 9th house in astrology. What we think is Gemini, and that's the 3rd house in astrology, if you know the natal wheel. So 9 to the 3rd. And in essence, we can believe one thing, but we can end up parroting all sorts of other commentary in our head that talks us out of our belief. So I could say, you know what? I believe I want to buy the expensive one, whatever that is. I want to buy the expensive one. I believe that's the one for me. I think that's the one that'll make me feel proud of myself. And so you have this belief that you have. And then your mind, which has been programmed by TV, media, people, relationships, authority, starts saying, oh, that's indulgent. That's selfish. You should save your money. This is the way it should be. That the way it should be. And you're going to start to realize that you must not be thinking very highly of yourself if you're not letting yourself have what you believe. And I believe that is what this full moon in Gemini is going to expose. I think it's going to be a wake-up moment. some sort of like, almost like smelling salts when you wake up, someone passed out in a movie, like you're going to suddenly wake up and realize, oh my gosh, my mind is corrupted to putting me down. My mind has been brainwashed by something, myself, into thinking lower of myself, or to thinking I'm not capable, or parroting what my parents said, or parroting what my ex said, or parroting what the internet says. And I think one of the things of this week is we're going to catch ourselves in negative thinking, in a way of thinking that actually demoralizes us or undercuts our power. And that voice is what we're looking to identify and change this week. Whatever that bird tweeting voice is from our old story we were born to, that voice, that mindset has to go. And that leads, of course, to the full moon in Cancer, which will be an emotional way of feeling about ourselves, has to go. So between the full moon in Gemini on Monday and the full moon in Cancer 1 month later, you're going to eliminate an old way of thinking about yourself and an old way of feeling about yourself. And those two things, what you think and feel, those are what we're tethering you to the old life. I believe we already know what we want the new life to be. I think we already figured out what the old life needs to be gone out of our life. Like, it's very clear, the old and the new. The only thing holding you back at this point, according to the planets, is your inner dialogue with yourself and the emotional funks you allow yourself to fall into. You fall into certain moods. And those moods are habit, by the way. They're very habitual, that we fall into a certain mood. Just like, in fact, I just felt it again. Every time I eat a huge Thanksgiving dinner, I fall into the same mood. Like, I pretty much want to conk out, watch a football game, totally, hang out with family, feel the fire. Like, we have these emotional habits that we fall into. And that's the other aspect too, the emotional habit and the mental habit. We have to break our emotional and mental habits in order to break free from where we have been trapped. So we work with someone named Devin Dewar. She is an angel reader on SeriousJoy.com. She provides angel messages for our Mega Monthlies. We have our Mega Monthly coming up. She had a couple of notes for this week from the angels. One note is, do you really believe you create your own reality? That's a core belief that she's calling for us to think about. And I think that's a real game changer right there as well. Do you believe you change your own reality? Is that something you really believe? Do you believe you're driving this car or not? I'll tell you, whether or not you believe it, you must now stand behind one or the other if you want to succeed in the new age. I don't care how old you are. Maybe you're 70 years old and you're watching this. I don't care that you spent 70 years feeling like you were a victim of the world and that you had no power. Going into January of 2024, I challenge you to believe that you create your own reality. If you don't believe it's possible, it won't be possible, because what you believe is what reality becomes. So if you don't believe in ghosts, you don't see ghosts. If you don't believe in miracles, you don't see a miracle. God does not usurp your belief. God does not take over your free will. It will be whatever you believe. And then when you get to heaven, which we'll be talking about today with Dr. Eben Alexander III, by the way, the world of heaven, and he confirms this in his story, that you go through this process where you review the tapes of your lifetime and you go scene by scene. God, I can wait to see some of these scenes. And you realize where you had a mistake in your free will perception of life and you could have done it differently. What I'm telling you is, it doesn't matter that you've been your whole life not believing you can manifest. It doesn't matter that you haven't been able to do it even though you believe it. It's now time going forward to give it a try. And the way I work with myself is, look, I've already spent, 40 plus years believing in one thing. I owe it to myself to try these other years believing something else. So I think Devin's question from the angels is on point. Do you believe you create your own reality? That's very important. And if you don't, you're wasting your time, especially even on this show. I think you are. Also, be advised, according to the angels, you may be challenged by others this week. You may be challenged by others. Again, what's going to happen here is that some of us are meant to rise to a greater vibration in this life, and we're pioneers. We're Lewis and Clarks. We have courage. We're willing to get outside of our normal comfort zone. We do deserve applause because it's not comfortable. I look at it sort of like, the pilgrims that got on the Mayflower and went across the seas and braved the seas to find a new world. That's not the only example of being brave to try find a new world, but we are at this point now for people who are going to ascend and who are going to carry the earth to the higher degrees. You are a pioneer. You are starting something that has never been done before. People don't want to see you leave for the new world. They'd rather keep you back. People don't want to see you rise to a new level because it only points out that they're not rising to a new level. So expect conflict and friction if you are doing the right thing. Expect it. In fact, if you can, use it as a force. I've learned in my life now, if someone is against what I'm doing, like a battery, I use that as a propulsion. That just makes me try harder. If you say I can't, oh Lord, you shouldn't have said that, because now I am so motivated to show you I can. So try to turn any resistance into power positive for you, as it's going to be part of your slingshot to your new life, and it would be expected. And the last note from Devin is that it's time to start learning about ourselves. And I mean, really learning. I mean, really like an anthropological experiment, like looking at yourself, looking at what you believe, and starting to really draw some conclusions about who you were and who you are becoming. Because although this whole year has been, I think, this whole year has been sort of like getting out of a wetsuit. We've been, kind of pulling out each part of ourselves, trying to leave behind parts of ourselves. It's been somewhat of a sticky year. We certainly haven't raced ahead. We've barely made any progress. But what we have done is we've really defined our old life from our new life, I think. And now it's time to look at ourselves and really learn about, wow, look at who I am. Look at what I'm capable of. And the reason why you really want to know yourself, I understand this note from the angels, is because when you go out into the brave new world next year and you try to manifest your intentions in the world and take advantage of that chaos to get ahead, you can't forget who you are, and you certainly can't allow yourself to be defined by the world. The leaders going forward cannot allow themselves to be defined by the world. They must define themselves on their own accord. So learning about who you are and who you are not, it's a great moment. Another reason why I'm just going to plug 40 Days of My Truth and Purpose, because we saw all this coming and we were prepared for it, for everyone. So that's the big picture of where we are. It's a moment of a major narrative change. It's a new story. And this week, we will plow through a brand new draft of what you believe about yourself. Let's take a look at the planets. In the sign of Sagittarius, we got a party going on. By the way, I love me my Sages. Happy birthday to the Sages. The sun this week is moving from 2 degrees to 9 degrees Sagittarius. And let me just say happy birthday to Heather Exposito, one of our colleagues. It just came to mind. So happy step birthday. Happy birthday, Heather. We're grateful for you. Gloria Sagittarius on our staff. She's a step niner, so it'll be next Friday. But from 2 to 9 means that you're going to feel through what you believe about yourself tonight and tomorrow. And then Saturday night is going to be a party night because there's a new you in town, and you're going to come up to a new belief about yourself. Then Sunday, I'm predicting a breakthrough in a major realization that you realize something about yourself you've never understood before. And I think that's what this full moon at step 5 Gemini is. I think because we have been so distracted by what we were afraid of, we have failed to recognize what we are. Let me say that again. We've been so distracted by what we're afraid of or what we're afraid of becoming, we haven't seen who we really are. So I think the universe has a huge treat in store for you somewhere between Sunday night and Monday, maybe Saturday night as soon as, but I think it sort of has this domino effect like, oh my gosh, maybe I am the next Ernest Hemingway. And then you realize at step 4, like, oh my God, I have great ideas for books that I just let my mom think I wasn't good at. So I think it's like a real, the emoji with the mind being blown. I think that's what we're going to have here over the weekend. And please let me know in the comments. Please let me know anywhere you can, because I love the feedback to know. So it's going to be, I think, a head exploding week. And what happens is, come Monday, we come to realize it. It's such a huge idea or concept that Tuesday and Wednesday, we have to actually pray and accept it into our heart as true. So This is where you could be challenged by others, because there's going to be a doubting time on Tuesday and Wednesday of like, am I crazy? Am I just full of myself? What is this? And maybe my mom is right. Maybe I have these distorted fantasies that are not true. So Tuesday and Wednesday, you have to literally accept, do I believe this shift or not? Does it really resonate with my heart? Does my heart, step one, feel this way? Step two, that's the question. And if your heart does feel that way, then on Thursday you commit. So Thursday you say, that's it. I'm committed to this new story inside myself. I'm committed that this is what I'm going to believe in. I don't care what the world says. I don't care what society says. I don't care what science says. I don't care what anyone says. I'm committed to believing in this. And then 1 week from tonight, Friday, will be step 9. That's when you have to prove it by putting it into action. So I want to put that out there very clearly. It's not enough to believe this year. You have to believe and do. You have to practice what you preach to put this new belief into motion. It will only be a theory if you don't do some sort of action. Now, what are examples of action? Examples of action are, you go out and you make a major purchase. You buy that desk. You lease that office. You sign the contract. You file for divorce. You do something that proves to yourself. And I really believe, that belief without action this week will fall flat on its face. You have to follow through. Now, I'll remind you next week when this show's on the air that you have until Saturday morning to actually do it, whether that's an email or a post on social media or whatever. You can even just tell people, that can be your action. You tell the whole world, hey, this is the new me. And if they all say you're full of shit, then say thank you, because that's the resistance Sensei was telling me I was going to get. Awesome. That means I'm on the right path. In fact, if anything, you should question sometimes they're like, oh, we knew that always. We're just waiting for you to find out. But I think in a lot of cases, there will be a little bit of a pullback. All right. So the sun from 2 to 9 degrees, you're going to feel it and you're going to act on it by the end of the week. There's never been a more important week to act on your beliefs than this week, from what I can tell. It's what separates the adults from the children, the leaders from the followers, the one who are first to the ones who are last. Honestly, I swear to Goddess on that one. Now, Mars goes from 0 to 5 degrees. And this is where you're kind of putting your money where your mouth is. Mars is now behind the sun. The sun has passed Mars. That happened last week. And so now our heart is creating ideas. Our heart is in the front creating ideas. And Mars is catching up. Mars is sort of following through with those commands. And that's basically how we're now rolling until further notice, until we have another Mars retrograde. So the sun now, our heart is leading the way. Our ego is following up with actually following through. Mars from 0 to 5 means that your behavior has to start following what you believe. So it's not enough to believe. You have to practice what you preach. You have to follow up with action. All right. For it to be ratified into your personal inner constitution as law of your land, you must follow through. So if you believe, for instance, that you're worth more, then don't go cheap on yourself when you go spend money, or don't let someone get away with something. Sometimes, I always say, like, if a cashier shorts you a quarter and you have low self-worth, you walk your astro back in there and ask for that quarter. Okay. Why? Not because you care about the quarter, because you care about the message you're sending to the universe, saying, oh, I can be ripped off by a quarter. Now, of course, that quarter can turn into $250,000 if you have $1 million salary and your agent takes a quarter. Okay. So don't underestimate the power of a quarter. That's a large percentage. My point is that whatever you believe must be followed up with action this week, which will probably make it fun and enjoyable, I think, because for one, it's not just something we believe in. Follow through. And we'll be reminding our subscribers at Serious Joy to follow through every day this week as well. And then we have Mercury, which actually is in the very top of Sagittarius, goes from 21 degrees Sagittarius to 0 degrees Sagittarius. And the benefit of that is, as you are realizing that your story with yourself is changing, your mind is going to race ahead and realize your whole life is changing. So your mind is going to realize your whole life is about to change this week. And so this week, in this 1 week, you define your inner truth, but you also define your fate. You decide, how is this story going to end? You write your happy ending in your mind this week. And Mercury crosses the galactic center, which means your mind sort of connects to the galactic center. That will be on Wednesday. Yep. So Wednesday, hump day, again, hump day. That's when your mind says, yes, not only do I believe I'm a great athlete, I believe I'm going to win an award, or I believe I'm going to go to the Olympics, or I believe I'm going to be a famous coach, or so it's going to lead to where it's headed as well. A very powerful week of planning and spirituality. Now, what about the emotional side of things? The moon. The moon is in Taurus as we speak right now, which is great. I'm feeling pretty solid and grounded. And we'll be in Taurus over the weekend. So for today, Saturday and Sunday, you're really feeling your values, that you're worth it. The moon crosses Jupiter, so you'll have a boost of realizing the moon's about to cross Jupiter here overnight. So you may wake up tomorrow feeling more worthy than you did. The moon will then cross, of course, Uranus, which means you're going to feel that you're worth a better future. So when you look at the sun from 2 to 4 degrees on Sunday and the moon in Taurus, basically in this weekend alone, and for those of you, pat yourself on the back for watching this early so you're aware, this weekend you're alone, you realize your story's going to change and you're going to feel that, yes, you can manifest it. Yes, you can make it happen. So I think it's going to be a very solid weekend. Then what's going to happen is the moon moves into Gemini on Monday and Tuesday. And this is going to be the fight with yourself between your old voice and your new attitude. And that's what the full moon in Gemini is about. It's about getting rid of that old attitude, flushing that old attitude down the toilet, and instead adopting a new attitude about yourself. And so for Monday and Tuesday, you're going to be in inner argument because you're going to make this proclamation that you can do it. And then your mind's going to say, no, you can't. It's going to parrot. It's going to talk you. It's going to repeat what your parents said. It's going to repeat what your first wife said. It's going to repeat what your kids have said. All people who only knew you so far in the story you were born to, these people do not know the story you were born to live. So they're speaking based on the old you, not the new you. No one has seen the new you yet. So again, expect that opposition from others, but also realize that they know they're responding to the old you, not the you that you were becoming. Then the moon moves into Cancer on Wednesday and Thursday. And now we get really moody and we get really emotional about our life and can our life change? And this is where you process all the feelings as to whether or not I can do it or don't do it, or I feel tired, or I feel this way, or I feel that way. I want you to know how you feel as a result of how you have felt. So you can feel differently with a little bit of massage and a little bit of massaging. So no matter how you feel, that's not the way you're going to feel for the rest of your life. That's just how you feel now. And right now we do feel kind of in the dumps because we're coming off of an old story and we haven't started seeing the benefits of the new story. So I'm expecting Wednesday and Thursday to feel very sluggish, but I think on Thursday we commit to that new direction. On Friday, we wake up feeling a little meh, but we're starting to feel the future we can have. And then the moon moves into Leo right under step 9. And that means our heart takes over. So right in time to take the action on Friday, your heart will be on fire. So I think it's a very moody week. I think there's highs, there's lows, there's meh. Okay. Probably the most positive emotional of the week is this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Then you got to basically process emotionally through the moon in Gemini and the moon in Cancer, these changes. So expect some cloudiness and some processing. And it's a good time to talk to a friend, one who believes in you, not one who doesn't. Okay. All right. Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith is from 5 to 6 degrees this week. And what that means is that you're facing fears about who you are and who you're becoming inside. So if you're afraid of, and I actually already had this. I've got some amazing plans for the future. As soon as Black Moon Lilith went to 5, I started thinking like, oh, can I do this? Can I pull this off? Can I really make this happen? And thank God I'm an astrologer. I was like, oh, this is Black Moon Lilith. Okay. This is playing off. I think I knew exactly where it was coming from. Past lives and battles where we're about to go to battle and I was afraid I would end up getting killed. It's the same sort of resonant fear. Like it still plagues me today. Like if I want to change the world or put out a message to the world, I'm afraid I'm going to get killed. like it's funny how karma works that way. But just recognize that those fears and doubts are from past life traumas. It sort of clouding your judgment. And you just have to ask your heart, does my heart really believe that? So anytime you're in doubt this week, just ask your heart, does your heart really believe that? Do you really believe And I think most people will say, no, I'm special. That won't happen to me. And it's true. Why is it true? Because you believe you're special and you believe it won't happen to you. It's not because God decided that. It's because you decided to believe that. So don't forget that this week. A lot of the past trauma coming up with Black Moon from 5 to 6 degrees. Venus, my darling Venus, she goes from step 18 to step 26, Libra. Boy, things have calmed down since she's been in Libra. I'm so grateful for that. But you are basically opening up to changing your life this week. And Venus will cross the South Node on Wednesday at 24 degrees, which means on Wednesday, you're going to embrace that you have changed your teams. Okay. So there's a change of team that happens on Wednesday. Oh, look at that. That was from my iPhone. I forgot if you do quotes, you get little things from your iPhone. I can now trigger things. That's cool. Confetti. I love it. How funny. Oh my goodness. Right during Venus too. I'm going to have to learn these gestures because it's changing life. Thanks, Apple. But anyways, what this means is I think what you're going to have, thank you, Lori. It's time to celebrate. I think what we're going to have is that we're going to have this realization of some people supporting your new belief and some people not supporting your new belief. And because some support and some don't, you're going to realize by come Wednesday, who's on your team and who isn't. All right. So we're opening up to the truth of how relationships are changing. And by the way, if someone is not on your team, some choose to be a spectator, some choose to be in the bleachers and watch. Some choose to, to not be right by your side. So we are in this new fated moment, and not everyone was meant to run the race with you. Some will watch in heaven after it's all over and have comments and data boys and data girls after. So be conscious of that. And at the same time, it'll oppose the North Node, which means these relationship changes are happening because you are becoming this new character and you are heading to be a new character. All right. So that is Venus. In Pisces, we do have Saturn finally click to 1 degree on Monday. And that means, and this is another indicator, so the Sun in Sag is the new story about ourselves. Saturn at 1 degree means it's time to take responsibility for your heart. Your heart believes you're the next Superman, then you must stand by your heart. Whatever your heart believes, you must stand by. Saturn says if you don't stand by your heart, you are creating negative karma for yourself at this point, and you're signing up for another round in the old Dark of Ages tour. Okay. So just stand by your heart for at least a month, please. Okay. Just try it. Remember the Life cereal commercials in the 70s? Just try it. Mikey likes it. Just try standing by your heart. But the fact that Saturn is there means that you're going to feel the discipline to really do it. Okay. Whereas before you're like, such a pain. I got to get out of bed. I got to do this. I got to do that. But Saturn in that degree is just like, you're going to feel, you're going to have posture. You're going to have strength. You're going to have determination to do it. Neptune is still at 24, which means that we are psychically and spiritually falling into our spiritual teams and our spiritual relationships. So Neptune 24 does mean that the relationships are coming together. The teams of light are coming together. And boy, are they, especially over here with our team. Taurus, Jupiter is at 7 degrees this week and Uranus is at 20. No changes going on. Jupiter at 7 does mean that you are now coming to understand what you were fated to believe, your fated worth. So you are destined to have a certain self-worth. You are destined to have a certain self-confidence. Jupiter at 7 is pulling on that destiny. Can you walk away from it? Of course you can. You can walk away from it. You can deny your destiny. God can whisper 1,000 times and you can ignore it every time if you want. But Jupiter at 7 is whispering, hey, this is what your destined worth is. Yes, you were meant to be born in rags, but you're meant to die in riches. So we're never meant to end up how we were born. And so if anything, it just contrasted to what you're born to, and you'll probably realize where you're meant to be. But we are learning, Jupiter, what our intuitive net worth is. And because the Sun is in Sagittarius, then that is really going to stick home this upcoming week to next 10 days. You're really going to realize, yes, this is my calling. To value myself like a world-class athlete, to value myself like the next, great author, to value myself as the next, leader of my school district. I'm just coming up with random ideas, but you're going to realize that, yes, this is my destiny to really value myself this way. And if I don't value myself this way, nobody else is. Uranus at 20 up here says, okay, if you value yourself down here, well, that means that the glass ceiling breaks. That means that you're capable of going higher. That means that you have unlimited possibilities going in the forward, going into the future. So there's this realization that the sky is no longer the limit, basically, based on the fact that I now believe I am worth it, says Jupiter at 7. In the sign of Aries, Chiron is staying cool at 15 degrees, but Chiron at 15 does mean that we are officially healing and coming full closure with certain relationships. So I predict many relationships to come to closure in the next 2 weeks. Closure meaning that's probably the last time you'll talk to them in this life or for a very long time. All right. And that is just the nature of where we are. So we are kissing and hugging goodbye and saying goodbye to certain people. In the same sense, I have people from my past returning now for this new journey. And I'm realizing, oh, I met you in my 20s because we're supposed to work now together. And there's some of that going on right now for me in a big way. So it's funny how far in advance Sky will plant those seeds. But we are healing. And the North Node will actually go from 24 to 23. I can't remember how long the North Node was, over 60 days. Robbie did the calculation for it, but the North Node goes to step 23 on Thursday. And that means that we're now aiming for the plan, the mission, the big story, where 23 means it's now time to focus on the big picture and the mission. So as of Thursday, we're now focused on the mission. We're not focused on accepting what we're here to do. We're focused on actually doing it. So again, this is a big shift in gears as far as moving forward now with the new story. And then Pluto, good old Pluto, I'll just remind you, at 28 degrees Capricorn, you have until December 20th to sit in your new seat of power. And if you want to know what your seat of power is, I did this in the horoscopes 2 weeks ago. We now release all the horoscopes separately on Tuesdays. Go back 2 weeks and look at what your seat of power is for your sign. You have until the 20th, basically the beginning of winter, to stand in your seat of power. Pretty powerful stuff there. All right, those are the planets in the week. Now I just want to quickly show you some charts, as Dr. Chris likes to show you some charts. Here we go. Speaking of doctors, this is him right here, Dr. Eben Alexander, our special guest tonight on Astro Mingle, talking about the afterlife. Mind you, he is a clinical neurosurgeon, a scientist doctor who went in, I think, agnostic and came out a believer. So when a scientist says God and the universe exists, you want to listen. His story is phenomenal. By the way, he's a Sagittarius. Couldn't be perfect timing. This week, starts off with Sunday. Mercury trines the North Node on Sunday. Mercury at 24. Now, I notice Mercury's going to cross the galactic center this week. The galactic center is the birth canal of the Milky Way. If there was a big bang, that's where we blew out of, all right, our solar system. And whenever you have a planet cross the galactic center, that means you are sort of putting your vote in to the collective consciousness of what you intend to do. So as I said, Mercury will cross the galactic center on Wednesday. So come Wednesday, you're going to turn in your vote for the rest of your life, basically. And I do believe it's for the rest of your life, the plan. The details will still come out, but Mercury trining the node before it goes to 23, by the way, this is basically the coordination of who I'm going to be, Aries, North Node in Aries, who I intend to become, the character I tend to be, and how that ties into the story I plan to achieve. Notice that happens right when the sun is at step 4, when you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not who I thought I was, or I am who I thought I was. It's just time to believe. So really Sunday, I would say this is before bed. Before you go to bed on Sunday, probably a major realization about who you really are, where you're meant to go, and who you're going to become. So I think an exciting weekend happening as far as realization is concerned. Then we have the full moon, which will be early Monday morning. So you go to bed with that realization. And then Monday morning in the middle of the night here in the United States, apex is 4:16 a.m. That's the witching hour here in the United States. Wouldn't be surprised if some people wake up for that, by the way. Also, I'll be doing a special mega monthly, actually not mega monthly, but a special full moon special talking about what this full moon actually means with Robbie Hunt. She was a joint, a Net4 expert, basically. But this full moon basically is, okay, if I believe I'm actually someone special, then that means I can't think of myself as someone who is damaged or injured. So this full moon is a coordination between realizing I now believe something new about myself. Therefore, I cannot think the same way about myself. And that is one of the two major, if you want to think of yourself as a hot air balloon that wants to ascend to a higher life and a higher learning, there are two cords holding you down right now. One cord is your thinking. That's this full moon. The next cord is your feeling about yourself. That's the next full moon. So these are going to cut the two, let's say, cords holding us back from the galactic center. Is that interesting? Because it kind of almost quincunx the galactic center. Not quite, but it is a divine triangle there. So this full moon's a powerful one. Notice Black Bull has just moved to step 6. So now I'm facing fears about myself. Venus has now moved to step 21, the same degree as the solar eclipse we experienced in Libra in October. So that means we're now opening up to this story and to the team we're meant to be with. It's tied into destiny right here because there's a yod. You'll notice Uranus innovating the future, Neptune, the destiny I'm born to, a new story with new players and new characters. Saturn at step 0. This is the last moment of Saturn at step 0, holding space for the new spiritual story. So basically, as soon as you believe differently about yourself and you think differently about yourself, Saturn clicks into 1 degree and it's on. The story is on. It's now time to take responsibility for what that heart really wants. Later that day, at which is 8 a.m. when you wake up, Mercury then squares Neptune. Mercury, which is just 3 degrees, and this is the sign of 3. So we have an orb of 3 in the sign of 3, Mars and the sun, an orb of 3 in the sign of 3. That's not an accident. Mercury at this moment squares Neptune, which means that we now have to reconcile that my destiny is heading for a new destiny on Earth, and that has to be reconciled with my destiny in heaven. So there could be some last minute story changes all the way through Monday night into Tuesday as far as what you believe is going to happen. The next big day is, whoops, I just lost it, is Wednesday, hump day. This is when Venus will conjoin the South Node. So come Wednesday, a lot of power going on here. First of all, the main event here is that Venus conjoins the South Node and opposes the North Node. I think I said that wrong just now. And this is the moment where you realize your team has changed. So you'll realize come Wednesday, you're on a different team now, whatever that team is. And that could be political team, work team, a literal science team, a sports team, but it's embracing the new community that you're going to belong to, realizing you're heading for another character. Notice the sun is at 7 degrees. So we're spiritually praying like, yes, is this what I meant to do? We're sort of praying in. Mercury is on the galactic center at the same moment that you accept your team. And at the moment you accept your team, this is the exact conjunction of Venus and the South Node. We have a temporary yod here with the moon in Cancer, where it will be full next month. So next month's full moon, all right? And Jupiter at 7, accepting the fate of what I'm worth. I talked about that earlier, the fate of what I'm worth. So the fate of what I'm worth and the change of how I'm going to feel now moves into this new spiritual belief. 7 is spiritual, Sag is belief, this new spiritual belief about who I am and what I'm destined to do on the inside. So hump day is the day, literally, like always, where we cross the hump and we now believe here in Western culture. And then come Friday, and it's at early in the morning, Mercury then moves into Capricorn, which means we start planning for this future. And this is on Friday where you have to put it into action, right? And the moon is just about to move into Leo, so your heart's going to be there. As soon as the moon's in Leo, which will be about another hour from that, your heart is just going to trine in here. You're going to feel the passion. You'll be ready to rock the Casbah. It's going to be party on, Wayne, party on, Garth, okay? There is Venus squaring Pluto that happens the very next day on Saturday. I'm giving you a little a future look at this because it's interesting, but basically Venus will square Pluto. It looks like it happens later. I have the wrong time here. Is what I'm realizing because it's not exact, but Venus then squares Pluto at that point, which means a shift in seat of power. So you can see that this whole week results in a shift in power, a shift in your story, a shift in your team line, and a shift in your beliefs about what you're worth and what you're going to do, turning your homework into the galactic center. There you go. All right. And we're 7 minutes, running 7 minutes behind. So without further ado, go steep yourself some tea and let's have our weekly tea time. Oh, lovely. Here we are for tea time. And thank you, everyone. And thank you for the 7-8 bad, says Antro Design. Time to rest up for all this excitement. Yes, Sydney. Oh, that's great. Yes, it is in Miami, Monica. Monica Abbey, by the shore. Monica by the shore. There you go. All right. So this week for our soul horoscopes, which is what our tea time is about, I always say, steep yourself some tea. Let's have a little tea and discuss our life. This is the part of the show where I dive into the horoscopes for all 12 signs. And this week we have a lot going on. So I'm going to get a little deep, but I hope you will follow it clearly. First of all, I'm going to talk about for all 12 signs where your story about yourself is changing. So in all of our life, our story about where we change is epicentered in one area according to your sun sign. And I've said that before. So your sun sign is the one area that everything is focused on. And if you just change your story in this one area, your story will change everywhere. It'll propagate everywhere. Okay. Aries is the only one that changes literally and directly. Every other sign changes it through something. So Taurus changes it through their boundaries, and Gemini changes through their relationship to themselves, and Cancer changes it through their health. Okay. So you'll hear that it changes through one area of your life. You only have to get it right in this one area. Okay. And the rest will automatically happen. I have to say that. So I'm going to talk about where the new inner story is that you will commit to and take action on by next Friday. All right. Then I'll tell you about the full moon in Gemini. And this will be the area of your life where you have to adopt a new mindset about yourself. And again, just like the sun, if you just adopt a new mindset about this one area I tell you, the rest of you will follow suit because that's the way you are astrologically wired. So if you have to think differently about yourself and your health, don't worry, you will end up thinking differently in your marriage. You will end up thinking differently in your career. If you just honor to the place that I tell you about in your sun sign, not your rising. First sun, then rising. Then I'm going to talk about Mercury squaring Neptune. Remember I said Mercury squares Neptune, which basically happens on Monday. And that's when you reconcile your destiny, right? And you realize that you're onto a new destiny. And because of Neptune, it's the destiny, and the Mercury and Sagittarius is the story. So I'm going to talk about the two areas in your life where you have to reconcile what you believe with what your spiritual path is. So belief and spiritual path. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about Venus opposing the North Node, of where you're going to have to open up and release the old characters in one area, the old team, to move forward with your character and your destiny in another area. So I'm going to talk about letting go of this to hold on to that, letting go of the South Node to move towards the North Node. So I'm going to give you all these different varieties for all 12 signs. And although that sounds maybe complicated in the explanation, I'll make it very simple here in the reading. Okay. And I'm going to drink enough water here to do this. Starting with the Aries. Aries must now believe in who they are. You must believe in yourself. You must remove doubt from yourself now at this point. You've come a long way, Aries, and you're going through a major transformation with the North Node in Aries. You haven't been through this big of a transformation in 18 years, frankly. So 2004 was the last time you went through this profound of a change of character and direction. It's a big deal. And so now it's really time to believe in yourself and believe in what your heart is telling you in order for that to happen. All right. So it's time to believe in yourself. And that means remove any doubt in yourself. And that means follow the formula I gave you. If your heart feels it's true, then it's true. End of story. If your heart feels it's true, then it is true. And there can be no arguing with that truth inside of yourself. And again, you have to get out of your mind and get into your heart for this. And I often use this little example. It's like if you went to heaven and God said you can't come into heaven unless you answer this question, what does your heart really believe? What does your heart really feel? I think you'd be prone to say what the truth is because you want to pass on to the higher realms. Here on earth, we tend to argue with ourselves, try to talk ourselves out of it, try to make other people happy, try to say the right answer for the boss or whatever. You can't play that game this week. You got to stay very true to who you are, which is actually easier for you than most people. Now, the full moon on Monday morning at 4:20 a.m. says you must get rid of the negative self-talk. So you cannot be your own critic. You cannot be the devil's advocate. Do not play the devil's advocate anymore. Do not repeat or parrot things you've heard as a child. Do not, do not go down the negative what if sort of path. You need a new mindset and attitude with yourself that assumes what you believe is true, doesn't play against that you're not. So you have to end the argument of what is true and what's not inside your head once and for all. With Mercury squaring Neptune, you have to reconcile your life's purpose with your connection to God. So this is basically for Aries, a moment where you go, I know I was meant for this. And I feel in my connection to God that that's true. So you basically have to put together that you believe that you have a certain purpose, and you have to tune in, pray, meditate, connect that sense of who you are meant to be with that belief of who you're meant to be. So you have to get your beliefs and you have to get your psychic awareness and your prayer on the same page. All right. And work through any doubts of the other. Maybe your belief needs to be tweaked a little bit. Maybe your faith in God needs to be tweaked a little bit. And then with Venus opposing the North Node, it's now time to release any outdated relationships, accept any new relationships for the purpose of being this new character and going on the mission that you were meant to go on with your new character. So this is about embracing a new mission that you are going to do. And so because of this mission, not everyone will go with you. Not everyone will understand. Some people will be left behind. Unfortunately, that's just the way it's going to have to go. And I was just checking something there to make sure I was right. So that's for Aries. So for Aries, believe in yourself. Do not doubt yourself. End that self-talk and get your purpose and your faith in God on the same page. Taurus. Taurus is now your story and yourself all has to deal with your trust in yourself. So your old story had to do with doubting yourself, not trusting yourself. And that could have been a consequence of poor boundaries with yourself. So it's now time to change the story about trusting yourself, which means that you have to put your head down, look at your hooves, and just keep one foot after another, one hoof after another, following through with what you trust and not looking to the world for any sort of affirmation, not relying on your relationships for affirmation. This is about trusting yourself. The bull that trusts themselves will win the race. The bull that uses others to trust themselves will finish behind. Let's put it that way. Not necessarily not finish, but finish behind. So it's a new belief that you're going to trust yourself and believe in yourself and trust what you believe. That's the other way of looking at it, trusting what you believe. Now, the full moon says you've got to get rid of any self-worth issues that are in the way. So anything where you feel like you owe people, get rid of that. You feel like you owe the world, get rid of that. You have to be debt-free inside yourself. You have to be doing it because you deserve it, not because you owe anybody or you owe anything. So your mind cannot use as a rationale that you owe. That's poverty thinking. That will keep you from manifesting abundantly. You don't know anyone anything unless you shook on it. Okay. In that case, you can still owe with payment plan. Okay. So you don't owe anyone anything. You owe it to yourself is what you owe it to. And it's now time to end any negative thinking that depreciates your self-worth once and for all. You must reconcile your long-term boundaries, okay, with your social reputation intentions. So what you're reconciling is you're going to change yourself and you're going to hold to a certain boundary structure. Your story is going to be one that just stays until the end. And this has to coordinate with what you plan to do in society. So you could say you want to make sure that all the changes you are making in your life will also be a part of what you're aiming for in the world. They have to be on the same page, these changes. You cannot steer away from your path in the world at this point. You are destined for a new place in the world, and your changes and your boundaries must reflect that world destiny. Now, when it comes to Venus you are going to let go and say hello to a new lifestyle. And so Tauruses do need to reboot their lifestyle. It is now time. That's the people, the places, the environment. How much food? What kind of food? What other substances? It's now time to embrace this new lifestyle so that you can be the destined person that you're meant to become. What the nodes are saying is, if Tauruses stay stuck in the old lifestyle, then you may lose what you're here to do. So you have to change your environment. And the best way to do that is just to go ahead and change your lifestyle, even if it's not necessarily the perfect way to change. So change your work routines, change what you eat, change your path, your exercise path, change everything. Change your lifestyle and embrace it. And also work around the people you're meant to work with. This does mean there'll be a change of coworkers or a change of staff as well, so that you can be on your destiny. I know Tauruses feel loyal, but not everyone sees you through the end. Cancers. Cancers, you must now change the story of living in health and living in your stress. Cancers tend to live in distress. That's what I find. And their story is distress. That's a combination of a lot of things. Mostly it's the fact that you're emotional and you're sensitive, and you actually don't like to take care of your own feelings, and you like to worry about other people. So you tend to be living in a little bit of stress. You got to change the story of how you live in the moment. You got to change the story of what your moment to moment life is. A Cancer will say, life is hard. You can't have a belief that life is hard. That's choosing to live in stress. Okay. So you have to change how you live. Life is ... It's time for a new word when you say life is how you live. And by the way, it's also a new belief about how to live in your body, with health, with substances, with gluten, whatever it might be. Okay. So it's a new story of how you live in the moment. You're going to live a happy life. I'm going to live a joyful life. I'm going to feel fulfilled whether or not I have a person in my life, whether or not I have a partner. So it's about choosing a new belief about what the moment is in life to life. And then you're going to build up from that moment. Okay. Now, the full moon in Gemini says you've got to let go of some sort of dialogue or attitude about faith, about having faith, not having, having it or not having it, or having bad luck, or I must have bad karma because this happened. I must be doomed because that happened. There must be a curse on me, whatever. There's a negative self-talk about the universe working against you, or the universe not on your side, or you not being able to contact the universe. There's some dialogue about the universe and God and spirituality that is the old voice that has to go, or it's going to sabotage the new way of living in the moment. So it's time for a new inner faith and a new attitude about inner faith in your life. The reconciliation is going to be between a quality lifestyle and your life's purpose. So you have a certain purpose in life. You probably do know what your purpose is in life, but your daily life has to reflect that purpose now. So if you have a purpose to be the next spiritual great leader, then you need to live in meditation all day if you're going to be a spiritual leader. If you have a purpose where you're going to change the retail industry, well, then you got to do something in daily life that poises you to be able to do that. You can't be sitting at home on the internet or scrolling Instagram. So the point is, and this is just me saying as examples, it's time to basically practice what you preach in your daily life. That's what the reconciliation is between Mercury and Neptune. Practice what you preach so that you can have what you preach come true. Now, the Venus over the South Node says that Cancers are now going to be leaving behind an old story about your family or your home. So it's a change of characters around family and home. This may be that your kids have moved on. This may be that you're moving to a new house. This may be that you're no longer trying to chase after your parents loving you. This may mean that you're no longer going to take care of them. They're going to go into a home. There's going to be some change of characters around home and family so that you can actually live your life purpose and actually be on the path of your career goals. So by changing your story, you are able to live your career legacy, to go forward with who you're supposed to be in the world and the dent you're supposed to make in the world. And that all comes from letting go of some sort of emotional foundation of home and family. Leos. Leos are now telling a new story of self-love. And from the Leos I know, it's basically a self-love update, and it's also a self-love incomplete. So a lot of Leos have loved themselves because they look so hot, and then they start to age. Or they love themselves because they can dance like nobody else, but then they start to age. Or they love themselves because of this or because of that. Then they start to get married. So it's like the reason why you love yourself is changing. There's a new reason to love yourself. It's time to believe in loving yourself. And I think the biggest change is unconditional love. It's time to love yourself without any condition, that you don't meet any benchmark, that you don't have certain fan base, that you don't have so many followers on Instagram. You love yourself just because, which they say Leos do out of the gate, but really Leos are very selective. They love certain parts about themselves, and they usually don't love a lot of parts of themselves. So I think the Leos that adopt 100% unconditional self-love will be the Leos that go the farthest moving forward. Now, the full moon in Gemini says that means you've got to let go of thinking that you belong in certain places in society. Just because you love yourself unconditionally doesn't mean the world is going to love you unconditionally. It's going to be certain parts of the world. It's not going to be the whole world. So I think your mind tells you, oh, this person doesn't like me. There must be something wrong with me. No, this is just a person in your kingdom or queendom. This is just a person that doesn't follow your stuff. Not everyone is loved by everyone. Only you are loved completely and unconditionally. So a Leo has this attitude in their mind that they should be getting along with this group, or they should be having more customers, or they should be, being loved and adored by this part of society. And the answer is no. The love is unconditional in yourself. It's conditional as to who in the world loves you and who doesn't, and to develop a new attitude about where you belong in the world. So it's about a new voice about where you belong in the world and where you don't belong in the world. Now, the reconciliation is between personal dreams and personal boundaries. You have certain dreams, you're going to have to open up to some things and close down to others for it to happen. If you want to have the love of your life, or to be the number one singer, or to be the one that is MVP of the year, then you're going to have to open up to certain boundaries or close down to other boundaries. That ultimately, you're going to have to transform what you're open to and what you don't open to if you want to have those dreams come true. So it's a reconciliation about boundaries, trust, and intimacy. And by the way, some of those boundaries are the fact you have to let people in closer, that you're not letting people in closer. You're making them talk to the hand and keep them a little bit too far away from you. So in some cases, you got to let some people in closer for your dreams to come true. And they were right there under your nose the whole time. Now, with Venus crossing Libra, it means you're going to have to let go of an old strategy for how you thought things were going to happen. Let go of old plans, let go of old logic, let go of old algorithms, let go of old dialogue, old narratives, old intellectual properties, and realize that you have a new life purpose, an updated life purpose, and it's going to call for a different way of thinking and a different way of communicating. So the nodal crossover is that an old strategy is officially retired for the Leos and the Leo risings, and that old strategy is going to be replaced by a new purpose, which will eventually bring about a new strategy to get to that new purpose. So you could say this week, Leos are on the path of a new purpose. And I know that's true for me, just knowing what my meeting schedule is this week. Virgos. Virgos are developing a new story about how they feel about themselves. And I think this is an evolution for Virgos. I think you have always felt bad about yourself for one reason or another, felt a little, treated poorly. You weren't really valued by your parents. The truth is, no one can completely value a Virgo. They're too rich. There's just too much there to accept and appreciate. You spend your whole life giving gratitude and thanks to a Virgo if they had it their way. And that's not to say that you are a attention horse. It's that you're just so many things. You have so much energy. You're going in so many different directions. It's like for a parent to sit there and applaud everything just is not going to happen. So a lot of Virgos feel bad about themselves, or the story was they felt bad about themselves because their parents didn't love them, or because their first grade teacher told them they were nothing, or whatever. And so there's this story playing on about how I should feel about myself, and them fighting against that, saying no. So you're going to write a new story about how you feel about yourself under your own terms is what's going to happen. And when you do that, you'll be able to let go of a dialogue with the full moon in Gemini, a dialogue about what you can and can't do, or can succeed or can't succeed at in life. So the full moon in Gemini says Virgos have a certain attitude that actually keeps them from succeeding. And it's based on the fact of the way they feel about themselves generates this attitude in their head of like, oh, no one's going to ask me. No one will pick on me. No one will ask me to dance or whatever that might be. And it's all because it's a reflection of that belief about how you feel. You're always going to feel left behind. You're always going to feel abandoned. You're always going to feel unappreciated. Once you change the story of what you believe how you should feel, well, then suddenly what you can do opens up. Sky's the limit. So you're going to end an attitude about what's possible or not in your career, legacy, or parenting, because you're going to adopt a new story about how you feel about yourself. And it's going to change your self-discipline. Now, the Mercury square Neptune aspect says you're going to have to, there's going to be a new story about what brings emotional serenity into your life. And that new story of emotional serenity has to be reconciled with how relationships will go. Okay. So Virgos, I'll say it every week. I think Virgos are meant for true love in this lifetime. I think it's starting now with Saturn direct. I think it starts when Saturn gets to 1 degree later this week. Your love story is officially in motion. But you have to reconcile that you're going to feel good whether you're married or not. So your story of emotional serenity, of emotional completion, of emotional foundation has to be independent of the relationship. You can't hang that responsibility on a relationship. Like, well, I'll feel happy when I find that person. No, you have to feel happy independently, and then you'll find that person. I think that's the way it works. If there are strings attached to you feeling good, you'll never feel good. God don't play that way. There can be no strings attached, okay? So you have to sort of line up feeling good and how that leads to a happy relationship, not have a story of not feeling good because I don't have the relationship I want. That story has to be ended. It has to be coordinated for the positive. Now, with Venus moving across the South Node, you're basically going to be letting go of old, let's say, business. So basically letting go of old business, old revenue streams. You're going to be letting go of old investments, maybe letting go of old business partners, maybe letting go of a place you played in the business now. And with the North Node in Aries, it's now time to embrace transformation, a change of life, that you're going to change your life as a result of making these changes. So you're ultimately going to let go of old investments so that you can change the rest of your life. And that happens again, most likely on or around Wednesday, where you realize, you know what, fuck it. Oh, pardon my French. I'm not going for this anymore. Virgo got a cuss word out of me. I'm not going for this anymore. I'm not going to invest anymore in this. I'm going to actually, because I need to change my life, I need to let go of these attachments. So letting go of business attachments to change your life. All right. I don't know why that happened. Scorpio. Scorpios are changing their story of self-worth. Okay. So you are not worthy because of your resume. You are not worthy because of the people that love you. You're not worthy because of the achievements you have made. You are worthy, period. That's the truth. You are worthy because you say you're worthy. Because I said so. Okay. That's why you're worthy. So this new belief of why you're worthy is the potential for you to become and do things that you've never done before, ultimately. Once you have this new belief structure of why you're worthy, you're capable of anything. But if you thought you were only worthy due to certain things on your resume, that actually held back your capacity for doing big things in life. So it's a new story of self-worth. And it's one that your heart feels is true. That's going to be the hardest for Scorpios. You can't prove it at first. You have to believe it, then you will prove it. You cannot have proof before you believe it. That's one area where Scorpios are ass backwards, I think. They want the proof first. And that's not how magic is made, says Taurus, your opposite sign. Okay? Magic is made from believing first. Now, what will happen is your attitude, Gemini, okay, in essence, you have to have now a new trust in yourself. You have to have a new reason to trust yourself. Your mind has to trust yourself unconditionally also. So for Scorpios to really step in this new story, it has to be a new story of believing yourself. And it has to be a new mindset of giving yourself trust to begin with. Trusting by default. Trust, but verify. That's the best attitude. So yes, you can verify, but you must come out of the gate trusting. And so this full moon says, gone are the days where you pick apart your trust, where you talk about all the things that could fall apart, where your mind finds all the holes in the thinking and your mind finds all the things that are not trustworthy. Forget that. Assume trust. And you may go, well, I'm going to be a fool. No, if your heart feels that it's good, it's good. Remember, what your heart feels is true. So this is about taking power away from your mind and giving it to your heart, Scorpio, and giving it to your feelings. Okay. Now, the reconciliation between Mercury and Neptune is you're going to have to reconcile your plans for material abundance with your personal dreams. They actually go together. Okay. They're not non-exclusive. So what that means is you can be wealthy and also have all of your dreams come true. It's not an either or. I know a lot of Scorpios are in between jobs or in between projects right now because that Venus retrograde that happened over the summer, they're not quite exactly sure of where things are going to go in their future. And I think that's because you're waiting for this reconciliation of really having your self-worth in place and then having an idea of how far you're going to take that self-worth. That's Mercury in the high degrees of Sag. Like, I really think I'm worthy and I'm going to own my own company, or I feel I'm worthy. I'm going to make $1 million in sales. But it's like, well, I have to give up my happiness. Well, I have to give up my free time. Well, I have to give up my time with my friends and my lover. No. So you have to reconcile that your dreams will come true and you will make money, and find a way for both of those to happen at the same time. The Venus passing over the South Node says you're now ending an old karma relationship you had with the universe. So you and God have not necessarily been great friends in this life, looking at the planets. That's because you've questioned whether or not there is a God, or if God really loves you, considering how hard of things you've gone through. So you have to let go of that attitude about God, that either God abandoned you or doesn't pay attention, or there is not one. So you're changing your team of light for a new team of light, basically. And this is so that you can get out of the whole I'm doomed or I'm blessed and just focus right on the work and right on the lifestyle. So the North Node is saying, hey, it's time to create a new lifestyle. Quit thinking about being doomed by the universe or having the universe's worse luck. Focus instead on your life now. Get a new team in heaven and focus on life now. That is Venus crossing the South Node in Libra. All right. Sagittariuses. Sages, happy birthday, Sag. Sages are so much fun. I had a good Sag friend in Thanksgiving that I got to hang out with. Sages, your change of belief is tied by your change in how you treat yourself. So because you rule belief, your beliefs are only true if you practice them. Otherwise, they're actually a theory, not a belief. So what separates a theory from a belief in a Sagittarius is whether or not they act on it and follow it in their behavior. So it's now time to actually change your behavior and change your belief by changing your behavior. Okay. So it is time to move forward. Oh, we did skip Libra, didn't we? We'll do Libra at the end. Sorry about that, folks. We'll do Libra at the end. I'm actually way caught up. I'm paying attention. I'm just way in spirit right now. So we'll go back. Don't worry. So Sagittarius is the way you treat yourself is the way you, is what you believe in. The way you don't treat yourself is what you just think of as a theory. So putting beliefs into theory and putting theories into action. Okay. Moving forward and making those theories a belief by acting. That's ultimately what this moment is. And maybe you've always had these theories, but you never had the courage to act on it. And that's the change right there, that you have the courage to do it. Now, the full moon in Gemini says that your mirage basically is going to end up changing, which means that if you change what you believe and what you do and what you act on, then the way you think of yourself in your marriage to yourself, the way you talk to yourself in your head, the self-dialogue that you have with yourself, this has to change if you're going to practice what you preach now. So you can't just change your behavior. You have to change the coach behind you. You have to change the part of you that is either talking you up or talking you down. That voice in your head that basically talks you in or out of it, it's got to be on the same page as practicing what you preach. So it's a full spectrum of your ascendant line that's actually changing. Practicing what you preach and supporting yourself and your voices in the background, being the friend and the ally to yourself that you need to be. Now, the reconciliation between Mercury and Neptune says, you're going to try to be this new character now. Sagittarius are out and ready to become a new character and do a new thing. But for you to do that, you've got to be feeling comfortable in your own skin. You've got to reconcile that with your emotional foundation. You got to reconcile it with the way you care about yourself. You got to reconcile it with the way you nurture yourself. You have to stick around family members who do believe in this new character, and you have to close off relationships to family members that don't believe in this character. Sagittarius have no time for family that doesn't believe in them at this point. Okay, so you need to be emotionally nurtured, and you need to basically live with and dwell with the family members that are going to be behind you and behind this new character that you're becoming. So I think Sagittarius are very sentimental with family, and they have a hard time because of the karmic guilt of Pisces in the fourth house, separating from family when it's necessary. It may also mean that you have to have a more cozy home and be more cared for yourself in the background. Now, Venus in Libra means that you are going to have to open up to letting go of an old social reputation that you've always had. So it's time to let go. Maybe you're always the partier. Maybe you're always the fun one. Maybe you're always the responsible one, and now it's time to have more fun. There's some attachment to the public that you're going to let go of so that you can embrace your personal dreams. And so what the planets are saying is, if you want your heart to come true, you're going to have to let go of some attachment you have to friends, or maybe social life, or maybe a community, or maybe a reputation. You have to let go of something in that realm for your dreams to come true and for you to have what your heart wants, okay? But Sagittarius, it's now time to practice what you preach. And I, for one, am very excited about Sagittarius because I think they have yet to really achieve what they're here to achieve in this life. So we're about to see a lot of fireworks and fun stuff come from the Sages. Okay. Again, I'll do Libra at the end. Capricorns. Capricorns, you are now changing the story of inner faith. All right. So inner faith means that you're going to give yourself the benefit of the doubt, that you're going to assume everything's going to work out. Now, I know that's really tough for you, Capricorn, because you had Pluto in your sign from 2008 until really next year. So you've had a lot of things break down, a lot of things fall apart, but that was stuff that you were very behind in. That was your fate to make that transformation. It doesn't mean God doesn't love you. It doesn't mean you can't have faith. You really have to give yourself a blank slate with having faith in yourself from this point forward. Okay. So have full faith in yourself. Now, the full moon in Gemini says that means you're going to have to let go of a certain attitude that you have in the moment in your body. So maybe you always embody worry, or maybe you're always thinking about stressing about work, or maybe you're always stressing about whether or not it will work out. But what it says is your mind creates a certain stress in the moment in your body, and that mental stress that you create, you have got to let go of and think differently. That your mind has to be coordinated with this new faith in yourself, okay? And it has to be aligned with that new faith in yourself. So you have to basically, in a way like Sagittarius is, you have to walk the talk. They have to practice what they preach. You have to walk the talk. You have to live in the moment like the faith you have in the big picture of things, okay? Now, the square between Mercury and Neptune is between your conversation with God. So your connection to God has got to be aligned with your mindset and attitude. So in other words, whatever plans you make, whatever strategy you have for business or family or achievement or whatever, that has to be in alignment with your spiritual values, your morals, and your relationship to God. They have to be on the same page. That's not to say that they aren't. I actually think Capricorns just tend to plan them differently, and then they realize they're in alignment or they're not. What the universe is saying is make sure they're in alignment, okay? So make sure that your plans are in alignment with your spiritual faith for your success to go forward. With Venus in Libra, you're going to let go of old career goals or old goals for power so that you can feel more emotionally comforted and more emotionally grounded. So it's time to let go of business associates, contracts, promises, strategic alliances, anything that kind of keeps you from feeling emotionally secure. Your emotional security is the first and foremost as far as most important is, okay? And your career stuff, you're a natural at career, you're a natural at business. Don't worry about that, because whatever you're holding on to right now, it cannot get in the way of your security. If your security is in place, your career stuff will come. Okay. So that's the big underlying story there. And I think that focusing on emotional security is really important also, because it helps you with that faith. If you're not emotionally feeling grounded, it's hard to have faith. Okay. All right. All right, Aquarius. Aquarius need to change the story of being a friend to themselves and where they belong in society. So you've always had this story that you don't belong, or you're the misfit, or you're the weird one, or you're the one no one understands. And so you don't belong at this job. You don't belong in this relationship. You don't belong, on the bus stop. Like, you basically have this story that you don't quite fit in. You don't belong. And that's the story that has to change. Aquarius says it's time to belong. It's time to be your own best friend. And when you become your own best friend and you believe that you are your own best friend, then you will in fact attract people who are truly your friends and the ones who belong. So as soon as Aquarius believes in the fact that they're a great friend, they will attract their friends and allies in society. And I do think they already have, but you haven't to the greatest potential that you can. What needs to change as far as your dialogue is concerned with the full moon in Gemini is your self-love. Your mind does not love yourself enough. Your mind, I think, quite often is putting off self-loving, making yourself earn it, going cold on yourself, trying to be sort of cool by not being Leo-like and not diving into self-love. But your mind has to be your biggest fan. If it's not your biggest fan, why should I be your biggest fan? Why should I believe what you're saying if you're doubting what you're saying, if you're doubting whether or not you deserve it, if you're doubting if you're lovable? So the full moon in Gemini is a change in dialogue about loving yourself, that you're going to love yourself and love yourself some more. And that will allow you to believe in yourself and believe in you being a good friend to yourself and believing where you belong in the world. When you love yourself and you believe in your own friendship, you'll believe that you deserve that place in the world that you're going to be going for, which I think is what the Sagittarius spectrum is going to do, help you find your place in the world. Now, the Mercury-Neptune square is between your social reputation and material abundance. Aquariuses have some blocks between being socially accepted or socially successful and financially successful at the same time. You guys have Pisces in the second, so you've been brainwashed by Christianity and Judaism over the past lives where, it's more humble to be poor and it's more humble to give away stuff. And in that case, like, you've been very enlightened about how to treat people, but you haven't really allowed yourself to have what you deserve as far as success. So you have to basically coordinate success with money. They have to be on the same team. Popularity with money, a good reputation with money. And yes, let's call it money because there's nothing better to call it at this stage. One day it might be credits. One day it might be digital currency, but right now it's money. And you're the last person that's going to be involved for money's sake. So I'm not even worried about you becoming greedy. It would take lifetimes for Aquariuses to become greedy, but you've got to have material success and social success on the same team. Now with Venus and Libra, your Venus in Libra says you're going to now let go of an old life purpose, an old cause that you used to be fighting for, so that you can now adopt a new strategy. So you have an old cause, which might have been based on the way you're educated in college, or what you rooted for in your 20s, or what you thought the world was about in your 40s. But whatever the case is, whatever that cause is, that's a dying cause now. You're going to get a new cause to replace that cause, but you're going to focus more on the strategy of how to get there rather than focus on what the cause may be. All right. So it's let go of the old purpose. There's a new reason. And this, I think that new reason, by the way, is your role in the age of Aquarius. I truly believe it. And whatever plan you're making, that plan is tied to your role in the age of Aquarius. So we're starting to see with Aquarius is becoming their own friend and believing that they are a good friend to themselves. This is the birth of your role in the age of Aquarius. Pisces. Pisces, you need to tell a new story about self-discipline. So the reason why you're doing it, why are you getting up in the morning? Why are you doing it? Why do you care? Why are you committed? That story is changing. The old story was because I have to, because I'm in debt, because I promised this person, because I feel guilty. The old story was anything but because you believed. Okay. So Pisces are finding what they believe in and why they believe in it. What is their purpose? And that purpose and that destiny is what gives you the discipline to get up. So Pisces are going to be motivated and disciplined by what they believe in their heart and what they feel in their heart, not disciplined and motivated by karma, guilt, debt, issues with other people, spiritual, past life crap, because a lot of Pisces have a lot of spiritual stuff from past lives. And so they were trying to avoid that. Now you're going to have a pure self-discipline based on what you believe. So Why do you believe it's worth it? Why do you believe you should do it? Why do you believe you should be committed? That's the story that's changing right now. The why you're getting up at 8 a.m. to do it in the first place. Now, what has to change for that to happen with the full moon in Gemini is you have to change the dialogue around your feelings. Okay. You have to change the dialogue around how you feel. You have to change the dialogue about what you feel. You have to change the dialogue about why you feel this way. I felt this way because my mom made me feel this way. I feel this way because of this. I feel this way because I didn't get enough sleep. Your mind keeps talking you down into feeling certain ways or not feeling certain ways. And that talking down is what's keeping you from really going where you want to go. So the astrology says that your attitude about how you feel, it's not even how you actually feel, it's your attitude about how you feel. That attitude is holding you back from your success, your 10th house, from really going where you're meant to go and doing what you're meant to do. Okay. So change how you feel or how you think about how you feel and let go of an old attitude about how you feel. Now, the square, Mercury squaring Neptune, you have to reconcile your long-term career plans with your character, who you want to be. So it's now time to coordinate character and career. Okay. They weren't necessarily coordinated before. I think you were going after a career and you found yourself to be this character, or you were this character and you found yourself to be on this career. So I think it's a change of character and a change of your career at the same time, but being coordinated. That I want to be the most successful, businessman in my town or businesswoman in my town, and I want to be known for it so that the character matches what the goal is. That is the what you're doing this week in particular. Starting really on Monday, you start to coordinate those two. Venus in Libra says you're going to have to let go of old comfort zones and old boundaries so that you can embrace new abundance. So what the astrology is saying is what's keeping Pisces from earning the money they deserve is that they're still attached to old boundaries. They're still attached to old comfort zones. They're still attached to whatever their codependent blanket is, their blankie, whatever that happens to be. And I understand that, especially with your mind and your certain attitudes about your feelings and having gone through so much karma with Neptune and Pisces. I know it's been tough, but don't worry. It's time to let go of those old comfort zones and those things that you are attached to so that you can really manifest what you deserve. So if you're having trouble with money, Pisces, it's suggesting that you're too attached to certain comfort zones, which is why you are attached, not necessarily making the money that you deserve. Okay. All right. So I understand now in my zoned out here that I missed two today. I missed Gemini and I missed Libra. I don't know why. So we'll go back to Gemini. And I hope Sarah is listening to this. All right. She is. Gemini. I'm deep in the zone tonight, y'all. I don't know what it is. Geminis, you are changing the story of your relationship to yourself, okay? Your relationship to yourself. So you might believe, I see this in Geminis. I have a son who's a Gemini. I can say for certain he's not watching tonight, so I can speak frankly. Geminis, they kind of think they're only capable of, they have this story of what they're capable of and what they're not capable of. And so they sort of start treating themselves that way and they accept it and they believe that right off the bat. And a lot of times Geminis are caught in this story of what they can and can't do. And they've adopted it from society. Because you absorb so much communication and information from the universe and everything else, you start believing what your mom told you. You start believing what your dad told you. And so your mirage, the way you treat yourself, that basically your mirage is that other voice, the twin. So your twin is telling you a story that's not true, basically is what's saying. So this change of belief is changing what that twin is saying, changing what that twin is preaching to you, changing what that twin believes about you, which is the reflection of you looking on you in essence, right? So you're going to change that story. Now, the full moon, which is in your sign, see, we saved the best for last. The full moon that's in your sign is going to be about changing what you say to yourself and what you do afterwards. So it's about changing how you treat yourself as a result of what you say to yourself. Does that make sense? Changing what you do as a result of what you say. So for instance, if you're a Gemini that says, oh, I'll never amount to anything, and your mind says, I'll never amount to anything. So then you say, I'm not going to try. I'm not going to get off the couch today. That's an example of how what you say to yourself leads to not getting off the couch, or leads to not going for it, or leads to not applying for the job. So you have to end the story that your twin is telling yourself and update it to a new story. And then the actual words you use have to be positive and have to be followed up with an action. So that you're going to take action on what you were saying to yourself. Okay. Now, the reconciliation between Mercury and Neptune is that you have to, you're going to have a new vision for where your long-term relationships are going to go, your marriage, your partnerships, your long-term friendships. Geminis get very attached when they're close to people, but those long-term relationships have to coordinate with what your intentions are in the world. You can't let a spouse keep you from being who you're meant to be in the world. You can't let a best friend forever hold you back for trying for some sort of reputation that you're meant to be. So I have a sense that Gemini is going to be called to greater things in the world. The world needs you like we've never needed you before. Saturn is in your house of society. You are ready to be there for the world. But I think that a lot of what's holding you back are your relationships and your commitments to others. It's time to reevaluate long-term relationships so that it leaves space open for your reputation. Now, with Venus in Libra, it does mean you're going to let go of old dreams, let go of old things your heart was wishing for. It's not that you're not going to get what you want. It's going to be different than what you thought is what it is. And so you have to let go of certain heartfelt attachments so that you can move towards your ambition and what you're meant to do. Okay, so you're going to now be free to move on the path you're meant to be on if you let go of things your hearts are overly attached to or to ideas that just weren't practical. Geminis do like to dream. In their head, they go off dreaming and they get attached to certain ideas. And this could be the universe saying, hey, that's just a mind game. That's not real. Detach from those attachments so that you can be who you're meant to be in the world and live your real purpose in the world. Oh, by the way, Saturn in Pisces for you is that your career is starting. Forgive me. Your place in the world is happening from your career. All right. So basically your long-term relationships have got to free you so you can be what you're meant to be and do what you're meant to do. And that's not just world reputation. That's also career, legacy, business. So, don't let relationships hold you back from your goals is what the universe is saying. But again, coming it back down, make that twin be talking you up and then act on those positive thoughts and do not be held back from negative thinking. All right. Got Gemini down. And then the Libras. We're doing this all out of order tonight just because that's the fun way to do it. Libra, your change of story is literally in your head. So the voice in your head, that voice you tell yourself all the time, whatever you're saying, that inner narrative needs to change. I've never been inside of a Libra, and I don't think I've ever been a Libra, by the way, looking at my planets. But I think Libras are probably always narrating the story in their head all the time. And then he said, and then she said, and then this happened, and then that happened. And it's that story in your head that you keep narrating. That's the story that has to now be updated to the new story. Okay. Now, for this to happen and happen in a successful way, the full moon in Gemini says you've got to change the dialogue when it comes to the way you talk about yourself. You're either talking up and believing in yourself, or you're always talking yourself out of believing in yourself. Okay. And I think given the astrology, it's probably the part of you that talks you out of believing in yourself is the part of you that has to change. The part that doubts, the part that parrots your parents, the part that parrots society. Well, society says this, or society says women can never be this, or men can never be that sort of thing. That's the voice that has to change with this full moon. That's the attitude. You have a certain prejudicial attitude about whether or not you're going to believe in it. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. See, that would be a bad attitude about believing. We want to believe before we see it. We have to believe before we can see it. Now, the square between Mercury and Neptune is you're going to have to reconcile your big, brilliant ideas with the living a quality life. So you have to figure out how to live a high vibration quality life and also fulfill your brilliant ideas and your brilliant dreams. And I think Libras quite often will die for the cause. They'll die on the hill. They'll sacrifice themselves and throw themselves under the bus for the idea of justice, for the idea of liberty, or for the idea of fairness. And so I think this is what's being broken now. Libras can no longer sacrifice their quality of life for some big strategy or idea that they live by or some philosophy they live by. So you have to reconcile the two to be on the same page. Your big ideas and quality life must be on the same page. And with Venus in your sign, while the South Node is also in your sign, you are being seduced by Venus to let go of your attachments to an old character. okay? An old way of behaving, an old way of defending yourself. You're being talked out of the old fight, talked out of the old behavior, talked out of the old characterization of yourself. And the reason why you must leave this old characterization of yourself is so that you can be in the relationships you deserve and partner with the people you deserve to be partnered with. The last time you had this big of an ego partnership change was 2004, 18 years ago. So this is a big deal. When the Libras start teaming up with other people on the earth, the entire paradigm of relationships changes on the earth. But it only happens by you letting go of old ego attachments or old behavior or old personality attachments like, well, I'm always the smart one, or I'm always the first one. It's letting go of those characterizations of yourself so that you can find the appropriate place in relationships that you now belong. So Libras are switching their team, but it all happens by changing the story you parrot inside your head. All right. Well, thank you, folks, for your patience with me on that one. I am definitely in another world, which I think is appropriate for Astro Mingle. Keep streaming. Coming up, we have Dr. Eben Alexander III and his story of how he died and came back from a coma after this. This Zodiac weather is from Saturday, November 25th to Friday, December 1st, 2023. Looking ahead at your post-holiday weekend forecast, over the weekend there's a lot of inner transformation going on. You're going to feel a new story and experience a breakthrough. Let's drill down. On Saturday, it's partly cloudy and somewhat anxious. Step 2 to Step 3 means the Moon and Jupiter both rule the day. So you are feeling deeply about what you believe about yourself, and you are grounding these feelings for a new future. But with Mars squaring Saturn, it is an affirmation that it's time to change the story you tell yourself. On Sunday, it's sunny and learning. Step 3 to Step 4 means Jupiter and Uranus rule this day. This means that you're going to expand your belief about yourself, which will lead to a phenomenal breakthrough. We call it a Halamia moment. And with Mercury trining the North Node, you also realize how this new story leads to a new character. And with the Moon in Taurus, it's all becoming too real. Looking ahead at the 5-day mood forecast for the upcoming week, this week you take that seed of a new story and you carry it out to commitment and acting on the new story. On Monday, it's overcast and rather spaced out. Step 5 means Mercury rules the day, and very early in the morning, we have the full moon in Gemini, which actually apexes at Step 4. This full moon gives you a new mindset to clarify your story and ask the question, are you really sure you're thinking of yourself in the right terms? And with Mercury squaring Neptune, it's a shift of your big picture story and aligning it with your spiritual destiny and fate. On Tuesday, it's sunny and feeling rather open. Step 6 means Venus rules this day, so your heart is opening up and now accepting this new perspective on yourself and this new story. You could say you are setting course for a new horizon. And with the Moon in Gemini, you're ready to tell everyone and share your plans. On Wednesday, it's cloudy, overcast, and somewhat moody. Step 7 means Neptune rules the day, so you are going deep in your spiritual sense. The Moon in Cancer means you are feeling a lot of yourself and your own emotional story change. You are uniting your spiritual story, in essence, to your Earth story on this day. You could say the new story will take flight. And with Venus opposing your North Node, expect a change of cast of characters in your life. On Thursday, it's partly sunny, but rather alert. Step 8 means Saturn rules the day. So this is the day when you really commit to your new story on the inside. Prepare to pivot your life now. And with the Moon in Cancer, you are feeling into the possibilities of the future. And then on Friday, it's sunny and fired up. Step 9 means Mars rules this day. You're ready to put that new story into action. You're prepared now to live the new story. And the Moon moves into Leo, so you celebrate in your heart. And Mercury moves into Capricorn, which means your mind is ready to make some rock-solid plans.
It's serious joy, joy, joy.
Hello and welcome to Astro Mingle, the podcast that mingles with light workers and brilliant minds of the new age. I'm your host, psychic astrologer Christopher Witecki. My guest today is a fascinating person who meets both the criteria of a brilliant mind and a modern light worker. He comes today to speak about the afterlife, the realm of heaven, and miraculous healing. He's a fascinating merger of both science and spirituality. Academic neurosurgeon Dr. Eben Alexander III, whose career includes decades as a physician and associate professor at Harvard Medical School and other revered teaching hospitals, was once staunchly committed to the materialist worldview, the belief that the physical world is all that exists. His scientific belief system, however, was altered in 2008 due to a transcendental near-death experience known as an NDE, an odyssey into another realm during a week-long coma. Despite bleak medical prognosis, Dr. Alexander awoke to make an inexplicable return to full health. His medical case and recovery were validated in the peer-reviewed Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease. Since his NDE, Dr. Alexander has been reconciling his rich spiritual experience with quantum physics, cosmology, and the philosophy of mind. Dr. Alexander speaks around the world to educate about the role of consciousness and how it plays into wellness, healing, and recovery. A pioneering scientist and modern thought leader, Dr. Alexander has been featured in more than 400 media interviews, including ABC TV's Good Morning America, 2020, The Dr. Oz Show, Oprah's Super Soul Sunday, Larry King Now, Fox and Friends, Discovery Channel, Biography Channel, and numerous international radio, digital, and podcasts. His books are available in more than 40 countries. His first book, Proof of Heaven, A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Afterlife. His second book, The Map of Heaven, How Science, Religion, and Ordinary People Are Proving the Afterlife. And his latest book, Living in a Mindful Universe, A Neurosurgeon's Journey into the Heart of Consciousness, which, by the way, was co-authored with Sacred Acoustic co-founder Karen Newell. And it's with great pleasure that I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Eben Alexander III. Hello, sir. Welcome.
Hello, Christopher. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, actually, and very excited to actually meet and talk with you today for, I think, some of the most obvious reasons. But I've been watching a lot of the videos you have on YouTube. I have your book. I've been diving deep into what your exploration is. And as I mentioned in the open, I think what's most fascinating about you is the fact that you are this merger, this new age merger of science and spirituality. And the fact that you are yourself a doctor who's gone through this experience. I'm sure many doctors have rolled their eyes listening to patients coming from a near-death experience. But you are a doctor that understands the science as well. To start your story off, would you kind of talk about growing up in your spiritual background? I had seen a theological talk you did that you grew up Methodist. So what was your spirituality growing up?
Well, it was really, I was mainly influenced by my father, my adoptive father. He was a globally renowned neurosurgeon. I still have at my bedside his little pocket Bible that he had in his breast pocket when he was a combat surgeon in the Second World War in the Pacific Theater. He was there for more than 2 years. Saw a lot of horrific things in the war. And yet when he came back to this world, he was relatively unscathed. And I think that was largely because of his very natural and organic belief in a loving personal God and the power of prayer. I mean, he lived that. And as a neurosurgeon, he used prayer with his work with patients, trying to help their healing, et cetera. So he was very comfortable with science. He was fully aware of modern cosmology and, Big Bang physics and all those kind of things. And yet he had this very easy relationship with a loving personal God force at the core of reality that was benevolent and would bring wholesome goodness to this world, including healing his patients. So I had that big influence. And yet, of course, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And like so many of the children of that era, I always knew that science was the pathway to truth. In fact, I remember a very vigorous debate in 6th grade with my a Methodist church confirmation teacher, where I was trying to teach her about the Big Bang and scientific creation story, not wanting to buy into Genesis and, all of that. So I knew it, but I made the same mistake so many people make in our culture, even today. And that is a belief that materialistic Newtonian deterministic science was a pathway to truth. It's not. In fact, that Newtonian deterministic materialistic science was disproven more than 80, 90 years ago with the advent of quantum physics. We get into all that, but it makes a gigantic difference in terms of free will, notions of consciousness, to have a deeper understanding of what quantum physics is trying to tell us. And what my NDE showed me very clearly is that our modern science is working towards this, but that's a quantum-informed science of consciousness. It's not this dull, bleak, unthinking addiction to Newtonian determinism and materialism. That's not what's going on here. The real science of today is the science of consciousness. And you were saying earlier about all the physicians who might roll their eyes. Well, it turns out that the vast majority of my major support in this effort, the last 15 years of sharing my story, has been other scientists and physicians and nurses.
Wow.
And, people with scientific education who absolutely get, because if you read the medical records on my case, and there's a case report available to the public in November 2018 Journal of Nervous and Mental Diseases, that case report makes two gigantic claims. One is that there's really no way to imagine how my brain could have mustered up some kind of dream or hallucination with all the objective evidence with neurologic exams, Glasgow Coma Scale, specifics of those exams, CT and MRI scans showing the entire brain involved. None of that is really explicable, especially, so I should not have had any experience at all. That's what the science says, according to modern neuroscience. But I had the most profound, detailed, memorable, transformational set of events in my life, all when my brain was demonstrably offline. That's a very important point one. And very important point two of that case report is when challenged by the peer review editors of that scientific journal, they said, wait a minute, this case is unprecedented. You don't have people spend a week in deep coma from E. coli meningoencephalitis who then make a full recovery. How do you explain it? And that's when they said it's because he had a near-death experience that he had this remarkable recovery. And it's because they knew of other similar cases in the near-death experience literature, like Anita Morjani, who cured her advanced lymphoma, or Dr. Mary C. Neal, who had an over 30-minute warm water drowning, kayaking in Chile. And yet both of them should have been dead, just as I should have been dead. And yet we had these incredible spiritual journeys and then came back to this world and then had these miraculous recoveries. So that's where the world should be paying big attention to what is going on in these stories, because it shows us much more about our power as human beings to come into wholeness and healing.
It makes one wonder if there was some sort of a spiritual setup here, you being a neurosurgeon, having your brain basically ruined by that infection, and yet experiencing this spiritual journey. I almost wonder if these things are pre-planned, but we'll go on that actually in a moment. Please, why don't we fill in the gap here? I'm sure people are super curious. Would you tell us the story of what happened, when you woke up on November 11th, 2008?
Okay, well, this was November 10th.
Okay, so thank you for the correction.
but boy, do I rember that.
Yes, clearly.
Burned into my memory. But anyway, everything had been normal in my life up until that point. My former spouse and son had mild viral illnesses that week. I was hoping not to get it. Had a little sniffle the day before, but that morning woke up with severe back pain, horrific headache, and soon grand mal seizures, and I was lapsed into coma right there in home at bed. There's a myth out in the lay press about this, that it was a medically induced coma. Nothing could be further from the truth. This was a coma induced by severe meningoencephalitis affecting all lobes of my brain and my brainstem. And that's where this case report, if people understand the medical data there, they realize how astonishing the story is. People who don't have a medical education might not be as readily impressed with the facts of my medical case. But then what happened for me, and important to point out that there's an atypical feature of my near-death experience that I've really not even encountered in other cases. So, but NDEs are always tailored to the individual. So there are always these little facts that are there for that individual soul journey. And yet when you look at thousands of NDEs, there's a tremendous pattern to show us that they're really showing us a true realm that exists, that's important to us as human beings. Now, for me, that amnesia was the starting of all this. And so initially I was in what I call the earthworm's eye view, a very primitive course, kind of subterranean existence. And yet because of my amnesia, I didn't remember anything else. So I just thought, well, this is the way it is. Things are fine. You know, I just accepted it for what it was. Luckily, it didn't last forever. There came this slowly spinning white light that came towards me out of the darkness. And it opened up like a rip in the fabric of that ugly earthworm eye view realm and led up into this brilliant, ultra real gateway valley, as I call it. It was like Plato's world of ideals for the individual soul. And this is the region where, for example, we would reunite with our higher soul, with souls that had departed the physical plane, go through life reviews. And the life reviews are a very important concept. It's not just a remembering of events, it's a reliving of events, and also from the perspective of all involved. That's an interesting thing about life reviews that show us we're truly sharing the dream of the one mind. So when you have your life review, it'll involve the main events of your life that still hold residual teaching value, but from the perspective of everyone around you affected by your actions and thoughts. That's why in many ways that life review is like the golden rule written into the fabric of the universe: treat others as you would like to be treated. Because if you've been busy mistreating others through your whole life, in your life review, you have to be on the receiving end of all that. Anyway,
so, may I interject for just a moment? Because there's a lot, there's tremendous there. So when you first went into the realm, crossing over, let's say that, you said there was an earthworm sort of view. You felt like you were buried alive or in the dirt itself.
It was a very kind of dark, murky, you could sense things. I didn't have any body awareness at all. But in many ways, the memory of it is somewhat kind of bleak and depressing. And yet when I lived through it, because I was amnesic for anything else, it was just something I accepted. And yet I then went into this incredibly rich layer, that Gateway Valley, that changed everything. And that was just filled with beauty and love and kind of majesty and awe. I was a speck of awareness on a butterfly wing, millions of other butterflies looping and spiraling in these vast formations, colors beyond the rainbow. And down below in this beautiful meadow, it was a world of perfection. There were all these souls dancing. I remember children playing, dogs jumping, all these festivities, and all that was being fueled because up above were these swooping orbs of angelic choirs, these pure kind of spherical beings leaving golden trails against that blue-black velvety sky, but they were emanating chants and anthems, hymns that would just thunder through my awareness. And that was what was driving all this incredible beauty and mirth going on in the valley down below me. Luckily, I was not alone on that butterfly wing, and those who read the book Proof of Heaven will realize that my spiritual guide, this beautiful young woman that was with me on the butterfly wing, was incredibly important, not only during the journey as a spiritual guide, but 4 months later when I actually received a picture in the mail that showed me her true identity.
That's an incredible reveal, by the way. That's fascinating. That
I
there was a stranger in the realm, and then later, not to blow the story, I'll let you finish it, but later we find out that was a significant person you were unaware of. And you were in this realm, you're in this, it sounds like heaven. I mean, you use a valley term, but would you think this is what people are referring to as quote, quote, heaven?
Well, yes, but remember, these are always tailored to the individual.
That's fascinating.
And, some people will complain. They'll say, well, I know somebody had an NDE and they weren't riding on a butterfly wing. Guess what? If we teleported 12 people randomly right now into Paris and just distributed them liberally in Paris and then brought them back 12 hours from now, they all would have had radically different experiences depending on their personality, their mindset, where they landed, who they encountered, et cetera. And the spiritual world has a lot more variety and possibility to it than any kind of physical place on earth. So don't be surprised when some of the details of these stories are varied. And yet, again, when you read thousands of these, the overlap is so powerful that you get a picture of a very real realm that is there for us.
Do you feel it was powered by your own creativity and your own heart's wishes? You know, that beautiful butterfly and this almost fairy-like woman on the wing of it. It sounds like, you know, like a Grateful Dead kind of like poster, like very magical, mystical, very kind of 60s sounding, but also very magical.
Well, it was absolutely magical beyond description. And this is one of the reasons, you know, we often say that these experiences are ineffable. That means you cannot put them into language. What that really means is our language is very good for describing a trip to Disney World, but it doesn't work much for describing a journey to a place completely outside of time and space. You know, imagine you can witness your entire birth, death, everything in between, past lives, future lives. You can witness all of that in that space, and it's a reliving, not just a remembering. I mean, you need to appreciate the full power of that description to get what this spiritual realm is like, and that it is so much richer and more powerful than this. For one thing, by having such broad access, you know, one sees connections from that higher soul level. When you can see so many of the events of your life and how they tie together across time and space and how important they are. It makes much more sense than the little linear narrative of when you live those events, you know, moving forward in your life. So that's a very important thing to get, is just how kind of fully capable this realm is of demonstrating issues of our soul existence and allowing us to assess that and learn from that in this process of going through that life review. And then I would say what happens is our soul groups get together and plan next incarnations and then dive back in. So,
and you did all that. So the soul review, you said it was like you were reviewing moments of your life, but you were seeing it through the eyes of your children or the eyes of your friends or through the eyes of the people in your life. Is that what you said?
Very important to point out a major fact. And that is that with my amnesia, the amnesia continued all the way to the point where I woke up in the ICU room on day 7 from coma, unexpected to survive, much less wake up. And yet at that time, I didn't even recognize my mother, sister, sons at the bedside. So the amnesia was present throughout. That amnesia prevented me from having an Eben Alexander life review. But I did witness kind of this gigantic generic vision of life reviews and reincarnation in 2 visions that happened in the next phase of the journey. And I should get to that next phase. The next phase is that, so I'm in this beautiful Gateway Valley, the young woman on the butterfly wing, who was a spiritual guide and kind of a guardian angel. Her message to me, I think, was the main message for the world at large that I was to bring back, and other NDEers by the millions. That is, you are richly loved and cherished forever. You have nothing to fear. You're deeply cared for. That was the message that came telepathically to me from this beautiful woman on the butterfly wing. And I cannot tell you how reassuring and powerful and affirming and refreshing that message was in that context, because now everything started to fall together and make much more sense. But then there was this soft summer breeze that blew through. That was my first awareness of the divine, of that infinitely healing God force. And it's important to note that more than 90% of people who have had NDEs going back thousands of years across all cultures, all belief systems, and including many who were previously atheistic or agnostic, more than 90% of them come back, not just believing, knowing in the reality of a God force at the core of the universe. And I realized from my journey, it doesn't matter if you want to try and call that God, Allah, Brahman, Vishnu, Jehovah, Yahweh, Great Spirit, all the different names we have, as if we kind of own and understand the majesty and power of that creative force. No, we cannot. And that's why near-death experiences come back with this beautiful sense of connection with that loving life force that connects us with all of our fellow beings, all sentience, connects us with the animal and plant world. It connects us with all that is, this beautiful sense of love. Now, for me, what then happened was those angelic choirs above and their music and the anthems and all of this provided yet another portal. Remember the first portal I had coming up from the earthworm eye view, it came associated with a perfect musical melody. And it was by remembering the musical notes of those melody later in this journey, as I would ascend in the spiritual levels and then spontaneously fall back down to that earthworm eye view, it's by remembering the musical notes that I was able to conjure up that light portal that took me back up into the Gateway Valley multiple times. Now, on this original passage, after meeting this beautiful guardian angel and witnessing this incredible scene, the angelic choirs provided yet another portal up to higher and higher levels. And I remember all of four-dimensional space-time collapsing down, all of this deep time, different ordering of causality, an incredibly important concept to get, because the spiritual realm is basically in a realm of eternity. It is not slave to earth time and our temporal flow and even our very narrative of events unfolding across time in these lives. It's a much richer, more kind of facile position from which to witness all of this. And that's why it's so important. Now, in that ascent, all of this collapse led to this, what I call the complex oversphere, which was the universe throughout all of eternity. It was there as a teaching tool. And that was when I was in what I call the core. Now, the core was an infinite inky blackness, but it was filled to overflowing with love, with the divine love of the creator for the creation, an incredible sense of dazzling darkness. It was a resolution of all paradoxes where, masculine, feminine, good, evil, dark, light, love, hate, whatever, all the different kind of polarities of human existence come together into oneness in that realm. And that's where I recognized that our very conscious awareness is directly sourced in that God force of pure love that is so reassuring to near-death experiencers. There is not some battle between good and evil going on at those deepest levels. It's pure love of creation. And the creator loving the creation. And we're all co-creators with that God force. That's another very important concept here about our free will. But at any rate, in that core realm is where I had these visions that I'm mentioning that showed me in a very profound way life reviews and reincarnation. And the first vision was what I call the flying fish vision. And it was kind of like it sounds, flying fish down in the water, like us in these material bodies, temporarily dumbed down, programmed forgetting so that we don't remember past lives. That's an essential part of the science of people like at the University of Virginia, where they studied more than 2,700 cases of past life memories in children over the last 6 decades. And they found 1,700 of them are solved. That is, they were able to actually find the person who lived before that the child describes. But importantly, the doctors who have done that work will tell you must harvest those past life memories before age 6 or 7, because they're natural processes that cover them over, so that most of us as teenagers and adults do not remember past lives. But a lot of young children do, and certainly the ones who have been studied will demonstrate the reality of reincarnation. It doesn't matter whether or not you believe in reincarnation. This is scientifically validated evidence that means you'd be a fool to doubt reincarnation is real, even if you don't have personal memory of it. And many people, once they open their minds to this concept, especially with meditation, hypnosis, etc., they can start harvesting past life memories that contribute greatly to understanding the issues they face in this life. Anyway, getting back to the story, had the flying fish vision. And then, of course, when the fish are out of the water, that's between lives. That's when they reunite with higher souls and soul groups, plan next incarnations, go through life reviews, all of that. Now, the bigger vision came on a different future passage through that Gateway Valley, where future from the perspective of this realm. And that's where I witnessed what I call the Indra's net vision, a much grander vision showing this interwoven higher dimensional web of interconnections of soul lines, basically of sentient beings through all the various kind of manifestations of their life, all their interactions, all leading to the transformation of growth of consciousness itself. As Pierre Teilhard de Chardin wrote in his book, The Phenomenon of Man, back in the mid-20th century, he realized that, yes, there's an evolution going on. That, Darwinian evolution in biology was a big topic of discussion then, but he knew it was much bigger than that. He was a French paleontologist, so he was a scientist with billion-year timescales, and he was also a Jesuit priest. So he had a spiritual side. but he recognized that, yes, evolution is occurring, but it's much, much bigger than something limited to biological systems on Earth. It's the evolution of all consciousness. And that's really what I saw in this grand vision of Indra's net, and that golden center where all of this was headed. Was very impressive indeed. But it helped me to come to a deeper understanding of meaning and purpose that we have as sentient beings, and how that overlaps with kind of a meaning, purpose, and a flow of information of the universe itself as consciousness transforms and evolves.
So you say other beings, so we might classify in the waking world as aliens or other species of consciousness. You saw a variety of species, and you saw the evolution of consciousness itself in many different forms, is what you're describing?
Yes, and seeing it, not only that, but I mentioned it briefly in Proof of Heaven, but didn't go into a lot of detail, although I had gone into much more detail in the original manuscript, about visions of civilizations far, far advanced beyond ours. I mean, the comparison I use is civilizations where compare us to Earthworm is the same as comparing us to them, but in the other direction. So extremely advanced, far beyond our understanding of space-time and this particular universe, far grander understanding. But those civilizations also participating in this incredible process of growth. So amazing set of visions. Some of it I've just shared in these many talks over 15 years. I've given more than 700 presentations on my journey. But it's really about understanding. It brings us great comfort, actually, to take this lesson, because it shows us we're really one with the universe. We have nothing to fear. Death of the physical body is actually a liberation of conscious awareness to a higher state. That's exactly what I witnessed. That's what so many others have witnessed. And of course, for me, another essential part of it was the fact that I'd been put up for adoption when I was younger. And of course, this figures into all of the story in many ways. But that adoption abandonment wound is very important, because in so many ways, all of us, by being born into this material world, in some sense have been forcibly separated from that spiritual realm, even though, truth be told, our souls are chomping at the bit to get into these bodies, to live these lives and learn and teach these lessons. But it's just a much grander vision than I ever could have had before about the nature of reality, and a deeper understanding. And it's obviously something that resonates with a lot of people, because I get thousands of messages from people who've had similar experiences, or they say that reading my experience or hearing my experience described on a video or what have you, an interview, reminds them of something deep in their memory that they really hadn't been in touch with before. So I think it awakens a lot of people to memories, because I'm sure all of us have been here before. Some souls have much more experience than others. The brand new souls are the ones that tend to be narcissistic and kind of ego focused, whereas the ones who have been here multiple times are much more philanthropic, altruistic, and caring for the all, for the higher being, goodness for all. Those would be the more advanced souls. And then, of course, I also assume that they can get to a point where they move on to a next level and they don't even have to associate with the Earth School anymore.
That's fascinating. And in regards to reincarnation, were you shown a series of lifetimes or incarnations that had some sort of a linear growth arc? Were you able to put together how you came to this life with the reviews you saw up there in the realm?
Well, I did not get an Eben Alexander life review. I saw these big generic pictures of how all that worked, including the reincarnation. And, before my coma, as a card-toting reductive materialist neurosurgeon, I spent 15 years teaching neurosurgery at Harvard Medical School. I'd never even heard of evidence of reincarnation or considered it. And yet in my NDE, it was a profound element. Nothing else made sense without realizing we come back again and again in this process of refinement, of growing towards that oneness with the divine. But you can't do it in one lifetime. It occurs over multiple lifetimes. And that's really the piece that's missing from, for example, my Christian training, growing up in a Methodist church in North Carolina and not really hearing about reincarnation. And yet reincarnation is a huge part of many religious systems. But to get kind of to the essence of your question, I have used meditation A lot.
Okay.
I meditate an hour to a day. I've been doing that for 11 or 12 years now. I use sacred acoustics, and people who want to know more can go to sacredacoustics.com. Full disclosure, that was a company co-founded by my partner and the co-author of my book, Living in a Mindful Universe, Karen Newell, and she is a very important spiritual mentor to me. But I've used meditation because now that my memories are all back, I can actually take deep dives into meditation, into that mental space, and explore. And often the universe offers up to me what I believe are very powerful past life visions. I mean, they come to me in meditation in a complete setting. I'll give you an example of one that happened about 2 months ago, where when I was especially deep into a state that I kind of refer to as the state of no self, or the state of non-self, where it's just pure consciousness, and there's not even a trace of Eben Alexander's kind of ego-minded memories still there in the equation. But in that kind of setting, the universe will pop incredible scenes. And this one scene that was very realistic for me, I was up on the mast in a tall ship sailing out of a port. I have no idea where the port was. It was a beautiful sunny day. I was up there rigging sails. There were seabirds flying right up there in the mast with me, things like that. And you get a full sense in these kind of visions. And you've got to state the intention in the meditation. That you want to know what you need to know now, or you want to see some vision of a past life to understand an issue in the now, what have you. But by stating the intention and then being able to blank my ego mind by writing the tones of sacred acoustics, that's what allows for the universe to feed me these incredible scenes that to me make sense as past life memories. And of course, the problem I have as a scientist is I want to validate objectively those scenes. And so far, I haven't really gotten, you need names, you need places, you need dates, and that's what I keep going for in these meditations. But so far, I haven't been able to obtain enough hard data to link me to the vision I have and then be able to objectively check it. But I do get these incredible visions through using sacred acoustics. I know other people can do the same thing in terms of seeking past life memory. So it's just a very powerful tool of ongoing investigation that I continue with this daily meditative routine.
It seems like the human race is on some sort of a path of integration of these realms, as far as being aware of those higher realms while in this dim incarnation. And one thing I really took away from your stories in your book is that you describe this realm as more real than reality, which I found to be really fascinating. More vivid colors we don't recognize in this spectrum of our visual, things like that.
Well, that's because it's knowledge through identification. Again, another reason for the ineffability. We become others. In your life review, you become the others around you. So you can feel the emotional impact of your thoughts and actions on them. So this knowledge through identification, I became something grander than the entire universe in that core vision. And you know, people would hear this, and you know, the cynics would go, "What kind of ego is this representing?" It's not an ego trip. This is so far from kind of the ego and you know, my thoughts of Eben Alexander in this life, and yet they show me something about that soul journey, and that's very instructive and helpful at kind of getting a bigger picture of what all is going on here. So. Very important to open our minds about this and realize how important these kind of visions and this kind of occurrence that happens when you're liberated from the shackles of the brain and body. Astonishing what can happen. And yet, what I often tell people is you don't have to die to get this. Meditation. And for people who don't have a great way of meditation, I can suggest a great startup, and that's using sacred acoustics. It's a beautiful way. Uses differential frequencies, slightly different frequencies to the two ears. And so what's happening is every sound you've ever heard, chant, anthem, hymn that might have given you a transcendental state of conscious awareness or enhanced spirituality, they were all processed up in the temporal lobes in the acoustic cortex, circuits that have basically been derived over the last 2 to 3 million years in primates and Homo sapiens. Very different are differential frequency brainwave like sacred acoustics, where by using slight differences in the tones, it intersects in the lower brainstem, a circuit that's more than 300 million years old. General principle in evolutionary biology is, you know, if you're interested in consciousness, that would be the function we look at here.
Yeah.
You look at the anatomy associated, the brain, and you look back in evolution to look at how it's come through over the hundreds of millions of years of evolution. And what we find is by going way down into the lower brainstem, you're actually able to intersect consciousness at a very deep and primitive level. And I think that's why it allows us to escape the illusion of being here now in this body as an individual with a self-identity, but expanding into a much broader sense of consciousness.
So it triggers sort of like a timelessness in your mind, basically, is what you're saying, and accesses sleeping portions of our mind. Would you say, is that a fair?
It accesses that would be a fair statement. But again, remember, we're no longer in the brain. The brain is a filter, a reducing valve that limits that primordial consciousness. That's the deepest concept in the modern science of consciousness, is we're sharing one mind.
Yes.
That should be obvious to anybody who pays attention to things like telepathy,
Right.
and those kind of connections, and then all the phenomena around the dying experience, not just a near-death experience, but shared death experience, which happen to people who are totally normal physiologically. They're not sick, but a loved one 1,000 miles away, as the mother is dying, her soul goes and picks up the soul, say, of the son 1,000 miles away, and takes the son's soul along to witness even a full-blown life review as she's departing the world. But then the son's soul, the bystander soul, comes back to this world. That's shared death. There are a lot of them out there. Go to Shared Crossing Project. Google that one with William Peters' work to learn a lot more.
Fascinating. So the mind, so the brain is basically a modem, I guess, is what you're saying. It's basically logging into a greater consciousness and dumbing it down. It sounds like these are slow modems, our brains, basically.
Well, yeah, they basically give us this kind of version of consciousness that we use as individual beings. And yet it's just an eddy current that ultimately is connected to that one mind. And of course, we rejoin the one mind, but do note that there is what I call viscosity between lives, so that even though we dive back into that ocean of consciousness and have these rich experiences that involve multiple souls still alive, souls who have departed the material world, etc., all of that intersects in these near-death and shared-death visions. And what you find is the very same thing happens in dying. Some people say, well, you didn't die, you had a near-death experience. That doesn't tell us what happens when you die. Well, guess what? Refer to Christopher Kerr's work. He's a hospice Buffalo doctor, Buffalo, New York, and he wrote a beautiful book called Death is But a Dream. And in that book, he makes it crystal clear that in his patients, in this huge hospice population, 89% of his patients have very powerful dreams and visions at the end of life, often involving loved ones who have passed over, who are now coming to escort them over and to comfort them, etc. So the very same things happen that happen in near-death experiences and shared death experiences. So it's a very accurate depiction of what we should all expect. But when you leave the brain and body behind, your consciousness expands tremendously. It's the exact opposite of what a materialist would predict. That's why it was so shocking to me. And yet the NDE literature fully supports this beautiful vision of how our conscious awareness expands. But when I used that word viscosity a few minutes ago, what I mean is, when you take this whole literature on past life memories in children, obviously they still are living as a soul, continuing from the previous lifetime. Those memories were not stored in any kind of brain between lives. They're stored in what I'd call the quantum hologram, which is an information field that we all have access to and refer to as sentient beings.
I think in our community, we refer that to as the Akashic record.
Right. Akashic record would be another word. I know a lot of people have used that phrase to describe the same thing.
It seems to be the library of awareness, I guess.
Right. And of all the potentials, all the things that can happen.
Oh, so that's interesting.
We select from all of that, because I do believe there's a lot to this notion of a soul agreement. That is, our soul groups actually plan. And from my perspective, they plan mainly hardships. because the hardships are the things that actually catalyze and energize our growth and transformation as human beings. Of course, there are a lot of beautiful and loving aspects of life. That's what makes it all so attractive. But we should not avoid the hardships. In fact, in many ways, I came back from my journey realizing that the hardships in life had been some of the greatest gifts. For instance, my adoption abandonment wound, being put up for adoption when I was 11 days old, although my birth mother, unwed 16-year-old, wasn't ready to let me go. So she wouldn't sign the papers, but she couldn't claim me back from social services either. So I was stuck in a baby dorm for 4 months until she finally signed the papers letting me go. But that whole set the stage for me to have doubts in my mind about whether or not I was worthy of living. You know, an animal left behind by its mother will stop eating. I actually went on a hunger strike and was hospitalized at age 2 weeks for failure to thrive. All of that is interrelated in this gigantic story that then leads to my near-death experience, that beautiful guardian angel. And note that all of that happened 1 year after I finally met my birth mother, my birth father. I didn't know until the year 2000 they'd actually gotten married. I also didn't know until the year 2000 that they had had 3 other children. You know, after
Once they could afford it and had that family of 3, but you were left behind. Okay.
I was left behind. So anyway, but all of it fits together in this gigantic package. And when I look back on it all, that adoption abandonment wound was a huge part of my really kind of harvesting this rich kind of story, my relationship with the universe, and that I was indeed worthy of love, but all the issues that had to happen for our soul group for me to finally emerge with that kind of knowledge through this near-death experience and its dramatic demonstration of my connection to that birth family in ways that I never could have imagined.
So it's been said in other NDEs that that death is not an accident. I mean, they told you in your story that you share that you know, the woman on the butterfly said to you, you know, you're not staying here. Basically, that this isn't your time, which would indicate that I guess that death is timed. Was there that sense to you that no death is an accident?
Well, I think that's probably an accurate way of putting it, but I don't claim to have had any of that kind of insight deep in the midst of my experience.
All right.
In fact, the thing that brought me back to this world was after I'd cycled through these levels that I've described multiple times with a tremendous amount of kind of overlapping lessons and enhancement of my knowledge and understanding. There came a time when I could no longer conjure up those musical notes to get the portal to take me back up into the Gateway Valley. And they had told me every time I entered the core, you're not here to stay. You'll be going back, but we'll teach you many things. Wow. And I'd gotten to believe that going back was going back to the earth from my view. So no problem. All I do is conjure up those musical notes in my mind of the melody, and it takes me right back up.
You'll sneak right back in that heaven back door. Yeah.
Right. But there came a time when they were right. They weren't kidding. And I tried and I couldn't do it. I could no longer come up out of that earth from my view. To say I was sad at that point would be an understatement. But I also knew I could trust. I was promised multiple times by that guardian angel and deep in the core realm by that God force itself. You know, you can trust in the universe. There is love. When you have that love in your heart, the universe will bring that back to you and give you that protection. So the important thing is to remember to share that love with others. But for me, in that setting, I saw thousands of beings going off around me into the distance, heads bowed, many with arms up like that, some holding candles, murmuring energy coming from them. I couldn't understand the words of this murmuring, but it brought to me the very same beautiful, refreshing sense of being at home in my spiritual home, and yet I was down in this murky level. But that thousands, and what I said in my writings weeks later, I said they were basically the power of prayer. That's what I was witnessing there. It was this incredible sense of prayer and how that can cross. That's why I often encourage people deeply connect with loved ones who have departed or in the transition process. Prayer gets through, so pay attention to it. But then the last stage was seeing 6 faces that bubbled up out of the muck. They'd say a few words and disappear. I can remember them in my mind today as brightly, sharply, crisply as if the whole set of events happened yesterday. And it had all happened almost 15 years ago. And the interesting thing is those were mainly the faces of people who were physically present in the ICU room the last 24 hours I was in coma. The reason they're important is there were many other family and friends there earlier in the week who were not in my memories. And so the vast majority of the coma experience that I remember, and it seemed to go for months or years from within that perspective, but the vast majority of it had to happen between days 1 and 7 of 7-day coma, but actually between days 1 and 4, 1 and 5. And I talk about the timing of that in the book, Proof of Heaven. It's a very important kind of concept about it all. But it was the last of those phases that brought me back to this world. It was a 10-year-old boy. And this is Sunday morning, day 7 of coma. They protected my younger son. I have 2 sons who were 20 and 10 at the time. Bond at age 10, and note the name Bond. Believe me, I'm
No accident, huh?
the beauty of that name. He was my Bond to this world. But anyway,
Wow.
they'd kept him from the worst news during that week. But on that Sunday morning, they had a family conference. They said I'd gone from 10% chance of survival during the week to a 2% chance, but with no chance of recovery now. On 3 antibiotics, on a ventilator, but with no positive neurologic signs. I was basically, they recommend stopping antibiotics, take me off the ventilator, and just letting me go. So Bond heard that. And he knew all of a sudden things were much worse than he'd been told. He came running down the hallway. I'm lying there on my hospital bed, eyes taped shut on the ventilator. And he pulls open my eyelids and he's pleading with me, Daddy, you're going to be okay. Daddy, you're going to be okay. One eye's looking over here, the other over there, neither pupil's working. Anybody in medicine knows that's a horrible picture. I didn't see him with my eyes or hear him with my ears. I was way too far gone from this world. And yet I sensed that deep pleading. You're going to be okay. And what that showed me was through this entire journey, because of the amnesia, I felt this can continue, it can cease, doesn't matter. But now all of a sudden, everything mattered tremendously because there was another soul out there in the form of Bond. And even though I had no memory of, a son or Bond or who he was related to me, I knew I had this very profound sense as a soul that I had to somehow get to where he was and help him with whatever he needed. And that was really the impetus I had to come back to this world, was that love for Bond, sensed in that very kind of limited kind of interaction. And yet it was a much broader connection with the world at large. And that's what brought me back here.
He was your lifeline, your spiritual umbilical cord, basically back to reality. Do you recall how you came up with the name Bond way back when he was born? Was that a divine inspiration?
Yeah, it's a family name.
Okay.
My former spouse, and it was, in fact, the person that this referred to lived 3 generations earlier. His name was James Bond.
No, are you kidding me? That's funny.
Well, of course, and the older son, Eben the fourth, and I were pushing. Once, I had named, our first child was named after Eben Alexander III. So I'd already used up my ante. So it was now my former spouse's turn. And that was the family name going way back, was that James Bond. And we mentioned that. She said, no way, because then he'll be stuck with that kind of 007 identity. So she had another name instead of James. So Bond's his middle name. I won't bother you with the first name. But anyway, that became his name.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of, the way it unfolded was almost magical. And who knows, maybe it was James Bond who came back as your son. That's something you might ask in a meditation someday.
Well, I remember when my older son, Eben the fourth, who was a great, great big brother, he was 10 years older, but he was a fantastic brother. But when Bond was like 2.5 years old, Eben taught him to lean up against the wall and say, Bond, James Bond, Martini, shaken, not stirred. And
that's cute.
Thought it was great hilarity that young Bond was assuming this role.
So you are now actively in meditation, and I know we don't have the time to go into the depth of it, but is it in essence the quieting of the mind? Is there any, first steps you would recommend?
Yeah, well, the goal of it all is to turn off that little voice in your head, the little voice. Many people identify with that voice as who they are. They think that is their consciousness. It's a little more than a parlor trick. Your consciousness is your awareness of that voice. I wish Rene Descartes, he said, I think, therefore I am, 4 centuries ago. I wish he said, I'm aware of my thoughts and therefore I am. But the thoughts are not the magic of consciousness. It's the awareness. And it turns out the entire universe is self-aware. And that's where this notion of primordial mind and of the brain serving as a filter or transceiver to allow a little eddy current of primordial mind to come in to serve as our conscious awareness in these bodies. But that it ultimately is part of a soul line that has that viscosity, so that between lives, your soul will come back out on the other side. And a lot of the issues and memories and stuff that you had in this life contribute to the issues and stuff of the next life. But for some reason, it's better for us not to have all that higher knowledge. I think it gives us skin in the game so that we buy into these lifetimes. And at least at this stage of human evolution and development, that is kind of the important lesson we're to learn, is about the oneness that we share, how we're all in this together. It's that binding force of love that connects us. These are the lessons that for the last 5,000 years, humanity, through religion, through science, philosophy, has been struggling and wrestling with, trying to come to a deeper understanding of. And I would say that right now, we're in many ways at the cusp of that 5,000-year-old effort of humanity to have a deeper understanding of their reason for existence and their relationship with the universe at large. And that has everything to do with this scientific revolution of the primacy of consciousness in the universe, which in many ways, when you get right down to it, reflects kind of big ideas of idealism and the prominence of mind going back thousands of years in spiritual traditions, East and West. So even though the science is, and this is through quantum physics, neuroscience, the hard problem of consciousness, philosophy of mind, the binding problem, the apparent unity of consciousness within an individual, all the evidence for non-local consciousness out of parapsychology, with quantum physics, all of this combines into a gigantic package of understanding. As we discuss in our book, Living in a Mindful Universe, we cover this incredible scientific revolution that is now uniting science and spirituality together. And on the same note, I will point out to people who are interested, there's now a 10th anniversary edition of the book, Proof of Heaven, that has 36 additional pages. And those pages tell you a whole lot more about what's happened in the last decade in this story. You can also, of course, just go to ebenalexander.com and learn a lot more right there. And the other site I'd recommend to people to learn more is innersanctumcenter.com. That's INNER, sanctumcenter.com, site that Karen and I put together. It's her wisdom behind that site, but it's multiple opportunities for people to engage with us on a regular monthly basis. There's a mental health practitioner course at innersanctumcenter.com. Also a set of interviews we did during the pandemic with thought leaders around the world on these topics. So it's a very rich resource available for free to the reading public. So highly recommend that people go there. innersanctumcenter.com.
Thank you for that. And it sounds like you're on the path as a cosmic explorer now. And now that you've come out of this, you are pioneering this new understanding of awareness. And it is an amazing time. I mean, in our community, we do believe this is the lifetime where humanity wakes up and becomes more aware. And speaking to, the God conscious, what we call God, you had said in the core, when you were in the core, there was a deity there. And was that deity the creator consciousness, or was it a creator representative, such as an archangel? Were you able to segregate an angel, let's say, from a regular incarnating human?
It was God.
It was God. So you met with
Brahman,
the big G.
or with the big gigantic G. But incredibly important to point out, I recognized in the core realm that the very source of my conscious awareness was that God force. So none of us are ever separate from that God force. That's so incredibly important to stress. Many people in our current world are very troubled by the polarization, the conflict, the warfare, all these difficult things. But do know that going within, centering prayer, meditation, sacred acoustics meditation, what have you, these are all ways of getting much more deeply connected to that God force, recognizing that that is at heart who we all are, is that infinitely loving force. The more we can bring that sense of love, compassion, kindness, mercy, acceptance, when necessary, forgiveness. And first of all, start by loving ourselves. I came back from my coma realizing that many of the world's problems are we don't even love ourselves enough. but
You're
it's also
preaching.
about
I hear
loving
you, brother.
the neighbor and the enemy, etc. This binding force of love has incredible power to heal. And once you start bringing that into your life and sharing love and healing with all your fellow beings and not being exclusive about it, but trying as best as possible, unconditional love, random acts of kindness. These are all things that can help each and every one of us grow into the spiritual beings that we came to this world to be. And it will make the world a far, far better place.
I fully believe in that statement, sir. I agree. Self-love is the key. And it's funny how we sometimes associate self-love with being egotistical, but they're far cry different, you know, as far
They're
as
completely different. I mean, narcissism and egocentrism are the exact polar opposite compared to what we're talking about now, this binding force of love and of sharing that love with the world at large. It's the complete antidote to that narcissistic, egocentric madness that has started wrecking our modern world. And it's high time we focused on the good of our fellow beings and how much satisfaction we can get in life by helping our fellow people and animals. We're all in this together.
So the big takeaway clearly is even the bad guys, so to speak, are connected to this light umbilical, to creator, to God, but somewhere in their evolution, they have denied that truth, but they are yet truly our brothers and sisters. We're all part of the same family. There's no outside entity other than this creative force from your perspective.
I would say that is it. And now the one thing we cannot know is if that force actually created this universe. You know, that's part of what's built into some of the religious stories, is that the God that influences this world today is a God that created this world. Now, I will tell you from a scientific perspective, we have no clue whether or not the universe is eternal. Now, there's talk, you know, about the Big Bang, 13.77 billion years ago, blah, blah, blah. But that's one tiny piece of the universe. That is not necessarily the be all and end all. And from my perspective, it would make perfect sense if the entire thing was eternal. So in other words, the Big Bang was a punctuation mark of multiple universes bubbling up, but that essentially the entire project never had a beginning or end, at least from the perspective of time flow. In fact, in many ways, you have to look at time flow in the earthly realm as being something that seems to be associated with the Big Bang. There's a lot of evidence the Big Bang happened, but there are ways in cosmology to realize maybe not, maybe we're being fooled. But from my perspective, there's absolutely no way to say that there was a beginning of the universe that we're claiming was created by that particular God. The whole thing could be absolutely eternal. In fact, the only way it's going to be infinite is if it is eternal. You could not have a universe that started, you know, at time zero, 13.77 billion years ago, that at some point crossed over from finite to infinite. It doesn't, that's not the way it works. But I think infinite and eternal would make perfect sense. And in that realization, this God force we're talking about doesn't necessarily have to involve with creating the entire universe. But I would say that this God force is very involved with the running of the universe in its current state of existence. And that's what you come into with a deeper understanding of these experiences and what they're telling us about that binding force of love and the golden rule. All these things are very important concepts that in many ways are written into the fabric of the universe itself.
How has your opinion of evolution changed? Do you feel like that was spiritually, you know, that matter did evolve and biology did evolve, but perhaps there was a spiritual intention behind it? How do you rationalize that now?
Yeah, I think evolution is absolutely, I mean, the fossil record that shows us kind of the time marks of evolution is quite clear. And so from my perspective, you know, it's very, it makes perfect sense that that Darwinian evolution as we see it occurs. But I think there's tremendous debate and discussion around, you know, mutations, how they happen, why they happen. You know, we say it's survival of the fittest, but there's obviously much more going on when you have to have these kind of specific molecular manipulations. And I think in many ways, a lot of that reflects this higher sense of meaning and purpose and kind of a teleological business around the universe. Teleological just meaning that it's aimed for some goal.
Okay.
In
Yes,
this
there's a
sense,
purpose behind it.
yeah, and for example, I would say one goal of the universe might be to have more and more advanced sentient systems to bring that kind of experience and wisdom of that one mind into interaction with this universe at large. And so you can easily see how it might be a teleological purpose of the universe to understand itself better and better, which involves more advanced life forms. Now, that ultimate consciousness, it's growing and learning through all of this, but at a level that's far, far, far beyond our human level of understanding. But we're still contributing to that growth and understanding through our living these lives and experiencing this, because we're all facets on the diamond. The diamond is the one mind. Each facet are the individual sentient beings that are soul lines that are participating to this process of growth.
And it seems like there's a bit of a paradox when you're in that realm, in the sense that there is a sense of you as an individual, but also a sense of you as part of the one. Is that correct?
Well, that is true, but do remember, especially important, are that you don't go in there as just your little self and go through life reviews as just your little self. That just doesn't happen. It's because of this interaction with the others. So sharing the dream of the one mind, that's the phrase I like to use. And in many ways, that's what's going on. And the dreams of the one mind are leading to the education and growth and transformation and understanding of the one mind at large.
Oh, fascinating. So let's do the magical reveal in regard to who the woman on the butterfly wing was. I think that's just such a powerful affirmation from spirit for you.
Well, I'm not going to do a total reveal, but
okay, fair enough.
What I will share is, I think it's one of the reasons why the book Proof of Heaven has been so popular with people, because it's an astonishing kind of ending to it all. And it has to do with the fact that I went into a dark night of the soul in the year 2000. I'd wanted to believe in that God and afterlife and all this all through my career. As a neurosurgeon, I found it more and more difficult to understand how conscious awareness could survive the death of the brain and body. That was a big mystery to me. And it was really, so in the year 2000, my son Eben IV was doing this school project, family genealogy. He said, you got to reach out to your birth family. So I reached out to him again, to the children's home. That's what I could do. Letter to the children's home. Is any sign of my birth mother out there? I always got the same response back: no, forget about it. Live your life. So that was fine for many years. But now my son in the year 2000 was asking me for more information. So what I called the social worker, and she said, yeah, I'll get back to you. 2 weeks later, I remember she said that Friday afternoon, if I called her up, maybe she'd have an answer. Well, I was driving through a blizzard. All this is there in the book Proof of Heaven. Driving through a blizzard, taking my son Eben IV up to go skiing in Maine. And all of a sudden remember, oh yeah, Betty said to call her today. So I called her up, driving through the blizzard. She said, well, I did find something out. Are you sitting down? Well, I was driving through a blizzard, but I was sitting down. She said, your birth parents got married. Wow. Now, that was the first I'd ever, that thought had never entered my mind. It was crystal clear to me from all the children's home information before that they'd gone their separate ways. My birth mother and father had separated. It's a high school lovers, and that was the end of that. Well, no, they actually got married. And that's when I did pull over to the side of the road. She said, and they had 3 children, but your youngest sister died 2 years ago. That would have been 1998. And they're still grieving her loss, so it's not a good time to come back in their lives. And that sent me in the dark night of the soul. If you read adoption literature, what you'll find is if an adult adoptee gets another rejection from the birth family, as an adult, it can really kick them off the cliff. And that's what happened. I had a dark night of the soul. My life started to unravel, marital trouble, trouble at work, lots of big bad issues. And I stopped taking my kids to church. I stopped saying prayers with them at night. And so that dark night of the soul was an essential step. I completely lost any belief in a loving personal God and the power of prayer during those 8 years. And it was a year before my coma. So in 2007, 7 years into this dark night of the soul, when walking on the beach in South Carolina with 2 of my sisters, they said, don't you think it's time you reached out to your birth family again? My first thought was no, because I remembered how devastating that had been back in 2000. But they were right. So I wrote another letter, and this time I got a positive answer. Yes, we'd love to meet you. October 5th, 2007, I walked down a sidewalk in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. For the first time in 54 years, I hugged my birth mother.
Wow.
And minutes later, I hugged my birth father. That weekend, I met a birth brother and sister who was still living. And then later, aunts and uncles, got trips to the beach with the family, blah, blah, blah. All of it, just a tremendous, beautiful reconnection. And yet it took my coma experience 1 year later in November of 2008 to really drive it home about that beautiful lesson of love and connection with the universe. And it was 4 months post-coma when I received that picture in the mail that my birth sister Kathy had promised to send me. And that's when, oh my God, it all came together. So I won't share any more.
Okay, that's a good hook.
Spoiler alert, but
that's a wonderful, and that's something to look forward to. Those who do read your book, I think they're going to be captivated by the entire journey. And it sounds like your heart was hurting. You were in your pain body from that, being abandoned. And then the irony of this is, of course, you realize that humanity is not abandoned either, that,
right.
That we have a heavenly family that is always with us.
That is very true. And that's what I was getting at a little while ago when I talked about that abandonment wound, and how in many ways, all of us coming into this material world have a similar kind of wound by being ripped away from the spiritual realm. And yet, in many ways, we can come into harmony with that as we come into identity with our higher soul and its purpose, and all that binding force of love and being here to help take care of our fellow beings.
So when you see, and this is just two questions and we'll wrap up here, sir. There's a lot of darkness on the planet now. There's a lot of, corruption, obviously, and people trying to take advantage of people, obviously war in the Middle East, potentially. When you see all this, does it not bother you whatsoever? Because there's a higher realm.
No, it bothers me tremendously. And okay. I find what I do is I pray for Ukrainians. I pray for Russians. I pray for Israelis, and I pray for Palestinians. Yes. Now, I realize that, Putin, he's going to have his own life review where right. He'll be going through, a lot of hardship that he's caused. He has to feel that from the perspective of everybody who he influenced in his life. So that's where he'll come to his kind of learning and recognition. Right. But essentially what I see is autocrats that are trying, and people who just want, people like Hamas, who, from my perspective, have nothing to do with a modern civilized humanity. So I find myself praying for the innocent victims of this on all sides. Feel, every bit of it to me is a cause for angst. And a reason for prayer, and also for doing the things that we can do in this life to contribute to making the world a better place, whether it's, giving financially to relief efforts for all the refugees and things like that, participating in groups. I like doing as I do to kind of travel the world and try and promote peace, harmony, and understanding. But it really, I think it's, never forget that the hardships and challenges, and that includes these horrific things that we're going through now, in many ways, those are the catalysts for growth. And it's when you kind of go no more, and you realize that hatred and hardship and hurting other people never, ever brings you any kind of positive gain. And this is where learning and recovering that knowledge of helping others, bringing love into the world, that ends up bringing love to us individually as souls on our soul journey. So it's really all about manifesting that love and trying to bring harmony and peace to this world. It's a tremendous source of angst to watch the news these days and to see all this horrific, man's inhumanity to man. And I just think that the hardship and understanding of it and witnessing of it hopefully will impel most of us, if not all of us, to start seeking peace and harmony and togetherness, and recognize that it's not about knocking out that enemy as much as helping all of our fellow beings. And that in many cases will include the one that you sometimes see today as the enemy. But
Yeah.
I will pray for Putin's soul too, but what he's going to go through. He's already set up for an absolutely hellacious life review. Same thing for Hamas and the evil that they've done by targeting, innocent civilians and the atrocities committed on October 7th in Israel. They'll have their life review to face up to that. But ultimately, these life reviews nudge all of us and civilization at large towards more loving and caring and compassionate existence.
Yeah, and these people who have done harm to others have lost their connection to creation and are unaware that they're unconditionally loved, and there's no reason to hurt another person. So
Right.
loving and praying them for them and their well-being is also, I think, positive. If you for the people listening, if there's one thing they could do right now to improve their life, sir, what would be your final word of recommendation?
Meditate.
Really? Wow.
We'll spend at least, spend some time every day escaping that mad voice in the head, the voice of the ego. The ego has two tools, fear and anxiety. And if you live from a kind of an ego-based, narcissistic, egocentric perspective, you're not going to have happiness. I mean, all addictions are based in ego toxicities. So it's really all about transcending above and beyond the ego. That's where, for me, the tones of sacred acoustics are an extremely powerful way to put that little voice, Eben Alexander's little running monkey mind, into timeout. Now, that little voice can state a request, an intention, ask a question at the beginning of the meditation, but then I've learned to ride the tones, focus on my breathing, and that little voice in my head disappears. I don't know if I said it earlier, but the voice in the head, as Michael Singer puts it in his book, The Untethered Soul, he calls the voice in your head your annoying roommate. And that's about as much, as we should give it, because there's much greater wisdom in your higher soul, the part of you that is aware, the part that expands at the time of bodily and brain death. But you can connect with it through meditation, centering prayer. It's part of what we access in the dream space. It's certainly part of what is accessed when people use entheogens or psychedelics. But again, I don't recommend the psychedelics for spiritual growth, although I think it's great that we now research psychedelics because they show us interesting things about the brain, how it's not creating consciousness at all, and how a single dose of psilocybin, for example, can lead to years of healing from addictions, from opiate, nicotine, alcohol addiction, and from a terminal fear of death in cancer patients, as Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins has demonstrated so readily. But I would say that regular meditation will give you that same benefit of that single dose of psilocybin by putting you in regular touch with your higher soul. And that's the part that can be so healing.
Beautiful. Yeah. And so really our soul is the one observing the chatter, not the one actually speaking the chatter.
But in many ways, the soul influences our will. And so, you're really in trouble if your will is entirely manifested by your ego mind and this kind of selfish, egocentric narcissism. That's a curse to live in the midst of that world. I'd hate to be in that skin. See that in some of our politicians, for example. But the reality is, yes, I think a tremendous amount of wisdom and of will that improves the world can be something we consider coming out of that higher soul and that kind of connected higher mind.
Beautiful. Well, I'd like to thank you for your time today. I know our community is just going to love everything you have to say. I highly recommend your books. And one more time, it's ebenalexander.com is your main website, but you also said the acoustics one also. Would you repeat that for us?
Yes, that is sacredacoustics.com. It's very informational about meditation. So it's not just a resource for getting sacred acoustics tones, but a go-to resource for all things meditation, learning a lot more about some of the best ways to meditate and to get beautiful results. And then the other site was innersanctumcenter.com, INNER, sanctumcenter.com. Go explore it. You'll see there are multiple avenues that people can pursue there. Many have no charge whatsoever. Some do have some charge. Depends on what all went into making that particular aspect. But innersanctumcenter.com is a great place to go. And just for information purposes, I'd also like to offer up BigelowInstitute.org.
Okay.
What you find, there are 28 essays written by scientists, all of whom had at least 5 years experience scientifically investigating the afterlife question and reincarnation. And at bigelowinstitute.org, you will find 28 winning essays that will convince you beyond any reasonable doubt that the afterlife and reincarnation are absolutely real. Do not ignore them or pretend that this is all some woo-woo nonsense. It's actually the way forward for modern science, including quantum physics and a deeper understanding of the nature of reality.
Fascinating. And such a relief, really, you know, to know that it's this huge relief. It really allows you to slow down and enjoy your life when you know that you'll have another chance, that you're eternally loved, and that there is people like you who've come back with evidence, personal experience to attest to that. So thank you for the work you're doing. I just want to say thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The world needs it.
For having me on.
It's been our pleasure. We hope to have you on again sometime in the future.
That would be great. I would recommend, if we do it again, maybe have Karen here. Karen Newell has a tremendous amount to offer. So feel free to set that up if you'd like.
Okay, I would love that. I'm going to actually check out Sacred Acoustics myself, because I struggle with meditation. It's a discipline thing, and I call my mind the smart ass. so it's always interjecting and acting like it's so smart when it's not. So any tools to help that process is greatly appreciated. We'll have both of you on next time. That'd be terrific.
Excellent. All right. Well, Christopher, thanks a lot. You have a great day.
You too. Excellent interview. And again, thank you to Dr. Eben Alexander III. Very compelling and interesting stuff. And always an amazing affirmation when you have a man of science that dies and comes back and tells you, I'm a man of science, and I'm telling you afterlife is real. So we'll be having him on again, and his partner as well. We put up in the chat also his partner's acoustics website as well. We'll put that up for you all as well. Thank you, sir. I think looking at the comments, people have loved that interview. And to wrap up our show, are you prepared for the new age? By the way, when I say new age, I believe it begins next January 20th when the Sun and Pluto conjoin. Well, I have a spiritual sensei service that will help you get to that level, and we are still accepting subscribers. If you're interested in coming down to SeriousJoy.com, for just $3.99, we will be your personal sensei, sending you 7 messages a day, a daily pep talk, which is basically a podcast every day, a full team of light, Robbie Hunt, metaphysical minister, Kristen Ryder, sound healer, Devin Dewar, angel intuitive, Heather Exposito, all of the above. She calls herself a spirit liaison. We're a spiritual team here to help you. And Joe Zaman as well, who I'll mention here in just a moment. Right now, we are wrapping up our 40 days of truth and purpose, where basically we are giving the proficient teachings right now of how to interpret your houses, your aspects, your transits, and a proprietary purpose calculator and cipher. Nothing you've ever seen before, because this is the step system taught in depth. And by the way, it's not too late to join. In fact, it would make an excellent thing to do over the holidays when you have all that time on your hands. Come on down to SeriousJoy.com. Now, I mentioned Jo Zaman. She is our ceremony maestro, if you will. She helps us with the lunar ceremonies. We have a new video up for the full moon ceremony in Gemini coming up. Basically, she's helping us to come together and co-create an artifact which not only beautifies your life, but also acts as a symbol to refocus your heart's intention. So we are teaching through the work of Jo Zaman how to beautify the ceremonial process of spiritual intentions, how to make your altar magical, and how to create memorable keepsakes of your spiritual benchmarks. That video is now live and available under lunar ceremonies off our main menu, but you'll also see it in the timeline. Jo does a phenomenal job this month. She has every month so far. Also now live from last week, we had a town hall meeting with myself and Robbie Hunt, where we basically went through the entire Truth and Purpose curriculum and outlined a lot of the 4th chapter, what we're doing. We taught how to use the ciphers. We also answered questions for our subscribers. We had about 60 people in our Zoom meeting. It was phenomenal. That's now available to watch. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend, because it dives deep into some great questions. This week, we come back with our Astrologer Roundtable, our Lights of the Roundtable mega monthly December report. Our whole spiritual team will be on camera to talk about what you can expect for November. That's many, many perspectives: astrology, sound healing, angel guidance, metaphysics, and myself. That will go live this Wednesday, November 28th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, streaming live exclusively to the Serious Joy app. If you are a subscriber, you will get a text message or an email saying the event is about to begin 10 minutes prior to the event. The greatest thing you can do in full circle of gratitude is sharing. Please share us with your friends and family. Please post us on your social media. We put out a daily zodiac weather. If you could forward that to your friends and family, that would be great. Or invite them down for our Friday night fun here with Namaste Today Live. Please share to care. Also, if you'd like to donate, we do humbly accept donations. I thank you for that. We take them on paypal.me/Sensei Christopher. And we have a Facebook group where we can all come together. It's at seriousjoy.club. Right now in the Facebook group club, we have been basically sharing pictures of our dream houses and dream bedrooms, which is kind of fun because we're all sort of dreaming together. We also have a human design study group. If you want to learn your human design, we have moderators who volunteer their time to teach you how to use human design. We say special thanks to those who are volunteering for that. If you want to follow us on any of our social media, we have a LinkedIn tree. It's at seriousjoy.social. And if you'd rather listen instead of watch, you can search for Namaste Today Live on Spotify, on Stitcher, and on Apple Podcasts. All right, friends, thank you for spending so much time with me tonight. I went a little long because I was a little spaced out. Thank you for rolling with the punches. Also want to do a special thank you to our producer, Noel Way, our director, Sarah Lyman, my partner, Eben Freeman, our entire Serious Joy staff, customer support, everything, Jody, everyone involved, and a special thanks to you, the viewer and the subscriber and the person who follows us every week. This is a phenomenal week. Don't forget to believe in who you really are, that you are a star in the heart of you. Until next week, I love you. Live, love, be.
It's serious joy, joy, joy.